Dun, dun, dun.
All right, we'll just have some background music. We are live.
Yes, sir. Let's go.
Man, I'm kind of bummed that Kahuku is getting smashed.
Kawuku got smashed, everybody. It's it's okay. It's okay. At least, it's alert. It's the first game of the season. Not the first. I think it's Kogu's second. They played St. Louis, right? First.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And I was, like I said, I'm pretty happy with St. Louis's showing.
Unexpected because I know their expectation for this season wasn't high. So that is a big plus.
Yeah.
Kogu won by 1 point.
1 point, and they were behind 13 points at halftime.
Mm,
So
good stuff. Good stuff.
good things, all good things. Anyone else in Hawaii traveling for high school football? Probably not.
Nope.
I did see that Kamehameha schools on Maui or on Big Island. One of those they played against a California team and lost.
Oh,
And
okay.
another team came and played another, I want to say Campbell or something. I think Campbell won.
Okay.
So-
Did Campbell travel overseas?
No, I
Like
think
mainland? Or they came to
they
Hawaii?
came over if I remember correctly.
Okay. Because I think Kogu was the only public school that's traveling outside of the state.
Mm.
But yeah, if it's I'm not too well caught up with the private schools. So like I didn't know Kamehameha, was traveling and playing too. But
Well, I think they were hosting someone too.
they were hosting.
Kamehameha. Yeah. And which one? Is it Kamehameha? Is it Maui?
Yeah. Well, at the bigger
Aloha,
one is
aloha MBM. Welcome to another digital Kava session. We're
Oh.
just getting everything warmed up. So we'll be starting shortly. Malo. Yeah, are they on Maui? The other Kamehameha? Or is it on Big
Yes.
Island? No, I think it's Maui.
there is
right?
Maui. I would think all their sports stuff would go to the Oahu campus of Kamehameha because they're the
Yeah.
bigger.
They got a
campus and probably
they have a
most-
nice like view from their stadium over there. So
Kamehameha campus is beautiful.
yeah.
Beautiful. I mean, and also their lunch is top notch too. One of the few schools. Well, I don't know how you guys do lunch in St. Louis, but Kamehameha, they're full on buffet plates,
Oh dude.
buffet silver wells.
You
Like,
can't
like
it's the richest high school in America. You
Yeah,
know, when your
it's
endowment
crazy.
for your high school is over $1 billion, own all the really nice real estate, get a lot of that funds. So
Yeah, probably the best lunch ever I've ever been in a high school. Like, we're talking about
top
buffet
notch. I never
style.
had lunch there.
Okay,
Mm.
okay.
Mari.
Mm, mm. You know what would be pretty cool? Because for those schools, you have to be Hawaiian. They need to open it up to any to just to show Polynesian nation they made it for all Polynesian. That would be pretty tika.
Yeah,
To
well,
me,
yeah, and
me, that would be
according to our cousin Tavi, I mean Kamehameha is Tongan, so
yeah, yeah,
hey, just let us all in,
yeah, yeah,
because they have 2 Olympic swimming pools.
yeah,
I mean, it's a
Olympic
beautiful
pool.
campus.
yeah. Olympic schools, top-notch facilities for sports too. I
Yeah.
mean, they have a nice baseball field, like you said, the football field. Yeah, they're pretty nice.
Yeah,
Up over
'cause-
there in the Kalihi valleys.
Yeah, I remember one of the alumni I think was telling me this, or someone was telling me this, that St. Louis was first going to be on that hill because St. Louis
Really?
is older than Kamehameha, and
Okay.
St. Louis was either going to be on the Kalaipohaku hills, on those rugged hills, or they were going to choose that where Kamehameha is now, and the Catholic Church chose the other location.
What was the reasoning behind it? There's got to be no.
I have no idea.
Okay.
Maybe the priests just wanted to be closer to Waikiki Beach or something. I don't know.
Because St. Louis is right kind of close to downtown.
Yeah, it's not too far. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
Mm.
sweet. All right, man. I think we're giving everybody a good chance to roll in, Mr. Atearoa. Should we get it rolling?
Let's go.
Sweet. Let's get the intros in, and we're excited for the show today, so let's get rolling. Malo Lele, Talofa, Aloha, and Bula. And whoever else is out there, we welcome you to another episode of the Polynesian podcast, a digital live Kava session. Mr. Atearoa, how are you? Looks like it's raining in the land of
Yes.
the long white cloud. I can see it in the
You
background.
right there. Yeah, you can
Yes.
see. So it's been raining all day. It's part of our winter. For those who are familiar with Seattle, Washington, Oregon kind of weather during the winter, it's a lot of rain and cold. So yeah, it's been raining the whole day today. So yeah.
Okay. All right.
How
So
about
it's
you?
basically it's been hot. It's been, I mean, hot comparatively speaking. It could be worse. It's been
Mm,
in the high 90s. Last week it was in the hundreds. So, hey, God's love you, Toko,
God
Malo,
love
welcome,
you. Oh,
welcome. So it's been good. Just been a long week. As I was mentioning, sometimes coworkers just want to drive you crazy. It's nice to have a Friday and
yep.
to meet the
Recover.
brothers. Yeah, meet
Recover.
meet the brothers and sisters on the digital Kava session and hopefully have some good discussion. So we welcome everybody today. We have some different topics. We'll start off with some general news that's going on in the Pacific. There's been a handful of articles that came across our desk. We'll call it
Mm,
our podcast desk. We'll talk about those. Actually, a couple of them are in Fiji. Some
oh,
interesting
God.
developments out in Fiji. Also, one of I think, okay, this may be a debate, and since Masi's in Aotearoa, this I know everybody who's the All Blacks fans not gonna like this comment, but the greatest flanker of all time is not Richie McCaw, in my opinion. It is George Smith. And I will maybe that will be our hot debate for to start off. Um,
Okay.
and
Okay.
and and for me, the big reason is this: not only longevity, right, but the guy who has impacted. Besides Michael Jones, I think Michael Jones was the last one to really have a huge impact on flanker, but the guy who you changed the rules not once, not twice, but many times, three times, was because of how effective George Smith was in the breakdown in poaching the ball, right? Like literally the rules on you had to let go of the tackler of the ball carrier on the ground. That was George Smith. They realigned how you enter and come through
Mm,
the ruck for the defense. It was because of George Smith. I mean, they changed the rules so many times. And each time they changed the rule, George Smith just adapted his strategy. And,
mm,
and he would go in and he would steal the ball 5, 6, 9 times, I think, 9 or 10 times in the game. And that's
okay.
huge. That dramatically impacts the team, And
Yeah.
so for me, George Smith is the greatest flanker of all time, in my opinion. Granted, it may be a little biased because he's Polynesian, he's Tongan, half Tongan. But for you, Mussy, anyone, do you have any opinion on who the best flanker of all time is? Or are you going to jump into the Richie McCaw bandwagon?
No, no, I agree with you. George Smith is the person I've heard a lot growing up of being very impactful, especially turnovers, taking the ball away. Um, you know, so I mean, I agree with that. I agree with that. I have no objection to that. Um, Richie McCaw was just, I think what he does have was the, like you kind of mentioned, was the longevity for sure. Playing as long and being captain is a big deal for a team that's probably considered the most winningest, well, most winning
Professional
team
team of all time. Yeah.
of all time. So I mean that carries weight. So, but yeah, I guess as impact player, George Smith. I'll go George Smith as a flanker. So
Alexander Vainicolo Malo,
hello,
welcome,
hello, Alex.
welcome. Here's another interesting thing. I don't have that video pegged, but I was watching um a couple of like Matt Gitto and a couple other of the Wallabies doing a podcast, and then they started talking about George Smith,
Mm,
right? And the topic that they were discussing was is is how Australian rugby right now approaches identifying like new talent missing the mark, right? Where it's kind of like, the NFL sometimes is caught up in this where they're so caught up with the measurables, right?
mm,
Oh, if you're a quarterback and you're not above 6'1" or 6'2", then how can you be
mm.
quarterback, right? And then you have guys like Russell Wilson, what's his name, the quarterback that retired for the Saints, Drew Bledsoe,
Breeze, Drew
or
Breeze.
Drew Brees. Drew Brees, these guys, smaller guys, win Super Bowls, do great things. And basically, the Wallaby guys we're talking about, they're like, here's a prime example, right?
Mm,
When you would measure George Smith in doing sprints and timing him, he was not off the charts,
mm.
right? He was actually, they would say, kind of mediocre or maybe slightly below mediocre. But when he was in a game,
Yeah.
he was like off the charts in production, right? And they were kind of mentioning, just imagine if the selections that are going now, and maybe that's part of the problem that um,
The Wallabies.
Australian rugby is going through. Not only do they have some structural and cultural issues, right? But then the way that they're selecting their talent is overlooking at what we call the tangible things, the measurables, and they're not looking at the intangible things and how the impact of the team. But that was one of the guys that they mentioned directly was George Smith, and they were like, this guy was off the charts performing during the games. But if you were just to measure him off of the sprints and stuff they did, that guy may not even have made the team. So that was
Mm,
kind of an
mm.
interesting topic.
No, and that isn't that like the same thing? Like some guys who do the NFL draft workouts, they're not eye popping. Kind of Tom
Mhm.
Brady was part of that. That's why he was
Yeah,
so low.
exactly,
He didn't.
exactly.
He was kind of scrawny. His highlights were very mediocre.
Slow,
His
yeah,
bench press and his vertical jump was, below par, right? And what he is the considered one of the he's probably the greatest probably player, in my opinion. This is probably
yeah,
greatest NFL player, and
of
he's
all
already up
time.
of all time. And not only that, I think he's gone up to like compared to the other national sports as probably being one of the tops, like to the Michael Jordan, in my opinion. That's
Yeah,
just my opinion to the Michael Jordans and the other sports, greatest of all time. So, hey, yeah, I mean, same thing. And didn't George Smith just recently go to Tonga? He was part of the coaching team with the Reds, and
yeah.
the Reds team.
That's the video we're gonna take a look at. I didn't know this, but apparently he went to school at Toloa.
I did hear about it. Yes, I
So
did hear
maybe
about
he
him
go
go.
for like a year, maybe just do a 1 year stint in
Yeah,
Tonga.
is his mother Tongan or something like
Yes.
that? Yes.
Yeah, I
Okay.
believe it's his mother. So, with that being said, we will jump into the first news article that we'll take a look at. And this was interesting. Google's to build a $200 million data center in Fiji.
Whoa.
That's a big deal. That is a big
Whoa.
deal.
That's a lot of injection to the Fijian
Hmm.
economy right there. That money.
Yeah. And that's pretty cool. I mean, that's probably going to be like the pretty much the data center for probably for the Pacific region, right?
Hmm.
Rather than shipping it all up to overseas, maybe they'll do a lot of that processing and data management and AI and all that stuff maybe
Mm,
out of this data center. So that
mm.
was pretty cool to see. And the other thing that was interesting is they're also bringing in four more additional cables, deep sea cables.
where they're gonna be running from Fiji
So
to.
they have it. Where did I just see it? Cable runs from Fiji to Australia. Another cable is going to run from Australia to French Polynesia, Tahiti,
Mm,
South America, and Chile.
okay, that's interesting. They're investing in the whole cable stuff because I would think they would start to try to do satellite. That's the
Yes.
okay.
Well, and
Interesting.
that's the thing that'll be interesting because I was looking at listening to the CEO of Starlink.
Yeah.
Like they were saying, hey, we can have certain customers, let's say in a big city like New York, but they say, but we can't serve all of New York, right?
Mm,
But Fiji and the Polynesia is not New York. I would assume that Starlink could
sure.
facilitate
Mm,
a lot, if not all, the market there. And then it looks like there's another one. Where's the other one? Another cable will run from Fiji to Guam and then to Japan.
okay.
So this
Domestic.
is this is big news, man. I mean, this will make a big deal not only for Fiji because of the investment that they're going to get, but also potentially lead to greater opportunity for the Pacific overall. So that was pretty cool news. Any thoughts on that,
Mm.
Mussy?
No, no. I was just curious on that they're heavily invested in the cable, running through under the Pacific Ocean and that because just with Tonga's experience with the whole movement of tectonic plates under the ocean and
And a lot, yeah. What Tonga's
just the
problems had
unpredict.
the last
Yes,
couple months.
yes, and I was just thinking, I don't know, but I don't know because I was just thinking maybe because the Polynesian nations are relatively small, and I thought maybe they would focus more on maybe satellite, as it's been more reliable and less interruption. But hey, we'll see how it goes. Maybe those guys, it's gonna have stronger cable, and maybe we'll be able to withstand a lot of the effects of nature that will throw it at them. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Let's see. Alex has a comment. You guys taking King Alpha level heat. It is hilarious, Alex. It is hilarious. And we'll talk about it. It's the kind of heat that's kind of like it's kind of like comical, right? That's the way I look at it, Alex. Is this we go in and this is we've had this discussion before, right? You sit down with someone and you say, "Hey, what do you think about this?" And then they tell you their whole position and everything, and you're like, "Oh, okay. Well, this is my position, right? And I believe X, Y, and Z." Um, and then they go, "Well, why do you believe that?" And I say, "Oh, because here's some geological studies, here's some history that kind of expresses my position, and then there's also some oral history that kind of matches certain parts of it." And then you ask them, "Well, what kind of studies do you have?" "Oh, my grandfather's father said this one time when we were hanging under the coconut tree, therefore it must be true." And then they accuse you of, "Well, your belief, Tua, doesn't make any sense." And I'm like, "Wait a minute. I at least have some scientific studies, I have some historical fact, and I have oral history, and all you have is some oral history, and yet I'm the one that doesn't have enough, evidence to express my position." And then the other one, Alex, that we get is this: "You are so disrespectful. You are so," and I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're saying I'm disrespectful for questioning the Tu'i Manua, and yet I could say the exact same thing that you're disrespectful to the Tu'i Tonga and the Tongan oral history." It's kind of comical. That's
It
my
is.
thoughts. Any thoughts on that, Mussy? Because I know
I,
you're definitely a favorite on TikTok. I always know if I cut up a video and Mussy speaking, I know that's gonna get me at least 600 views within a day. Within a day.
that's funny. No, I haven't been following too much to the last couple of weeks. I try to check the TikTok here and there, but it's been a while since I haven't checked because just with life. But like, I mean, you kind of mentioned it. I'm I'm comfortable presenting our ideas, and our perspective, and we'll see what everyone got. And then if it's just like what you said, we have a diversified data point. We don't just stick to just oral history, because you did mention how oral history can conflict and it can be inaccurate, because then everyone is having their own thing and it's not accurate. But we've kind of, kind of diversify our data point with the the ruins, and also the government structure, along with the oral history, that it's pretty sound, in my opinion. But we shall see, and we'll just let whatever idea is more sound to rise up. So
Yeah.
that's just
And
my
like we
thought.
said, we like the ideas to fight in the arena, you know?
Mm,
I feel
mm,
like our ideas have pretty good knockout power, and the other guys think they have knockout power, but we present it and, everybody can make up their own mind.
yeah.
The next topic is this one. This one I thought was interesting. Record number of Fijians heading overseas. The
Mm,
researchers say they think it could be temporary. But over the last 2 years, 40,000 more Fijians have departed the country, then returned. It's forced the Fijian government to raise the retirement age. Like,
hmm,
that's pretty significant, right? I
that
mean, when
is.
it gets to the point that it's impacting policy and how people are living their lives, it's obviously serious enough. um I'm
Mm,
interested to see why they think it's temporary. I don't know. Usually when somebody goes overseas, it ain't temporary, at least from our experience, right? I don't know. Maybe
yeah.
Fiji, because it's a bigger economy, a bigger country, maybe it's a little bit different than what I
Mm,
typically see from Tonga.
mm.
But any thoughts on that, Mussy?
Yeah, well, Fiji's interesting because they have quite a big population of Indians, which is a lot different than our Polynesians. When we travel, you will usually just travel for a very long time. Usually, when we return, it's usually just to visit family. But that's a little different population, there in Fiji. So when they say Fijians, I'm assuming it's a
Oh yeah, it's
big
across
group,
the board. Yeah.
because I'll give you an example, Dua. When I go to Fiji from Auckland to Fiji to have my layover, then go to America. 80% of the flight are Indian Fijians. So like, even
Mm,
coming back to Auckland, 80 to 90% are Indians. So it's a I know it's a big migration, and it could
ah,
be, maybe
so
a lot of the Indian population maybe migrating over to other places, and then
okay.
I don't know. I don't know. That's just my thoughts of my personal experiences with
No,
going
that's
to
an
Fiji.
interesting observation. So it could be nationality Fijian, but ethnically mostly Indian, going out looking for other opportunities. Interesting.
Probably,
That's an
probably.
interesting point.
Yeah.
They do mention here, um, I think with this high level of migration, things are definitely getting more difficult in Fiji. This is Sharon Liu, a research officer there in Fiji. There's a strong push within Fiji domestically for people to get out because they want a better life. The ultimate solution is for Fiji to create more stable job opportunity. I mean, this is pretty much across the board in Polynesia in general. I don't think this is
Yeah.
uniquely a Fijian problem, but it did kind of surprise me because I had always been under the assumption that Fiji was a much larger economy and country. But same thing I think with New Zealand. Seeing a lot of people in New Zealand migrate to Australia. So
Mhm.
even in a larger country and even a larger economy as New Zealand is seeing this, people are just migrating to where there's more opportunity.
Yeah. And just for their skill too, because I know Tonga was having some issues finding some laborers, because it's starting to affect Tonga's hospitality sector, because people were going on these visas for,
Oh,
6 month, a year visas to work in the farms in Australia and
yeah, they
New
pay
Zealand.
better. Yeah,
Yes, and then if they are good workers, the employer would
holds on to them.
extend hold on to them, and they extend their visa to resident, and then they would lose quite skillful workers and good workers from Tonga, because I think, because when I talked to Danny, he was building his house in Tonga. It was very difficult for him to find laborers. A
Skilled
lot of them,
labor.
skilled laborers. So he had to kind of really look hard for some good workers. Most of them were leaving, going out overseas for the pig.
Mm,
And to me, when you get that opportunity to go overseas and you do
you
well
gotta take
and
it.
you get a
Yeah.
resident, a lot of them will stay. You know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what kind of that's what didn't really make sense to me in this last part, but researchers say exodus could be temporary. I don't know what that doesn't make sense to me, right?
Mm,
Because once you find an opportunity overseas, typically
yeah,
everybody that we know says we're going to take it, and we're
yeah.
I love you family, I'll send some dollar bills back to help with what's going on. Um let's see, got a couple more comments popping up. Yeah, Malo Popo. God loves you. Appreciate it. Hey, Orator, welcome. Also, I
Hello,
appreciate it from Malo. Thank you for the support. All the way from Aussie, the land down under. Mount Druitt. Where is that?
Orator.
Is that New South Wales, or are you a Queenslander, Orator? I wonder which one you go for over there.
West. I think he's probably West Sydney.
Oh,
Maybe I'm just guessing.
okay.
I've I've been to Australia once, and when I stay in Sydney is with my family in West Side, West Sydney. So I'm just assuming. And they told me most of the Polynesian population in Sydney stays out
In
west.
West. Okay. All right. All right. So yeah, that was an interesting
That is
article
interesting.
that popped
Mm.
up. Let's see, we got a couple more that I wanted to take a look at. We do have a video there that we were considering. Here's another interesting one. This is more with sports, and Jerome Luai. He's pretty much confirming his allegiance to the Toa Samoa.
Oh, big
So
news. That's good
yeah,
news.
yeah. So he will be going to England. He said, "Yep, I'll be there." And he's just talking about how he's dedicated to Samoa and that
Building.
tour, and how he wants to inspire the next generation of young Samoan athletes to to play for
Mm.
Samoa.
Awesome.
And here's the interesting thing. On top of that, what he's suggesting is NRL expansion for a Pacifica team based out of the Polynesian teams. So basically, Tonga, Samoa, kind of like the Moana Pacifica,
Ah,
for the NRL. And he thinks that would
yeah.
definitely be a positive thing. I think that would be cool. And it
I think
would it would be an
yeah,
interesting pathway to kind of
yeah.
draw on some of the domestic talent in Fiji, Samoa, and Tonga. And honestly, that will put a lot of pressure on World Rugby, right? On the
Mm,
union things, because if they set that up and the NRL is able to establish direct from the grassroots in Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji, and I think a lot of the youth is gonna, the NRL is kind of exciting. It's kind of on the pop culture. Just look at the Warriors, right?
they
I
lost
mean,
again, Tua. The
ah
Warriors lost again.
man. So no more top eight. That's pretty
No,
much
I don't think
done.
so. Yeah,
Oh well.
yeah.
Let me. Was at least the stadium sold out again?
Well, this was away. They played at Manly.
Oh, they played at
So
Manly.
yeah, yeah.
So I think this is pretty cool, man. I would be.
Mm,
I think this is really good. It doesn't pull away from other markets in Australia, right? And it could be an interesting pathway. So I think this is cool. I'm hoping they can work it out. They might have to do something similar to the Moana Pacifica, but it would be great. I mean, and maybe even include PNG, right? Because the
mm,
PNG has a very strong domestic game and good structure, and PNG has a big economy. So
yeah.
that could be interesting. What are your thoughts,
Um.
Masi?
Yeah. No, I was gonna say, I think they can expand because right now they've got 17. Right? Is it 17
Mm-hmm.
franchises in the NRL? Me personally, I think PNG, they're because of how excited and how I think they've sold out a lot of their games are in PNG are really doing
Yeah,
well with rugby league. So I'm pretty sure they can probably do well on its own if they. I mean, if they need to put it together, Polynesians, hey, go ahead. But I think we can go separate and just develop that way. Just in my opinion.
yeah, because the
But
PNG team is pretty strong. They could probably
yes,
field their own team.
yes, and financially, I think they'll be fine
Yeah,
too. But I'm just thinking, where would you think is the best location to base the Polynesian NRL team franchise? I would
Prob-
think Auckland, because I mean,
yeah, I would say New Zealand is probably the safest bet. Um, and maybe they share Mount Smart and they just
w-
work on some scheduling so
yeah,
that when the Warriors are playing at home,
yeah,
the other team's traveling, and then vice versa. Whenever the
yeah.
Warriors are away, these guys play at home. That would be
No,
interesting.
no, that's awesome because to me personally, I would support something like that because it will benefit and just develop more kids to play for Tosa Moa Matema Tonga teams. I'm see to me, I wouldn't be. That's why the Moana Pacifica teams, no one really goes. I think the fan base understands it's good to develop the ones for the teams, but we all know if you're going to be good enough, the All Blacks and even Australia Wallabies, because they play in that
Hmm.
same competition, they'll pick you and you're going to go and play for them if you're good. So that's why I think the Moana Pacifica has a really, I mean, we'll see if RD has that push, but I have my doubts on it because I'm pretty sure the audience is pretty smart that yes, you're playing. Yes, it's good you play games and stuff, but you're not really helping the national teams talent wise because we know the All Blacks and Wallabies are gonna get first dibs if you're good enough, and then once you play for them, you lose 2 years if you gotta
Yeah,
sit out and then you don't play again. So that's my thing about the union side. But the NRL, it's straight up. Hey, you're gonna get paid well, and you're gonna have a good following. There's not going to be that thing like, oh, if you get picked for another team, you're still going to have an opportunity
you're
to play
stuck. Yeah,
for Matima
exactly.
Tonga because one, you don't have to do a stand down if you're not picked for the other team. So to me, I think the fan base of Polynesians will really rally behind the NRL
Hmm.
Polynesian team, in my opinion, because there's a reason to it. Because I've been to that Mona Pacifica game with my wife, and we went to Mount Smart Stadium. If it's about 30,000, I'm telling you, maybe 100 people were sitting there
Wow.
watching. Like
Wow.
it's sad, and I'm just saying, this is what I mean. It's this union has this philosophy of we'll just create this product here, and then people will just follow. It's like, nah, people have brains. They're not gonna do that. And yeah, but this Polynesian NRL team, I feel like well, people will rally behind it because it will help. It will help their heritage nations. But that's just me.
That's a good point, right? I mean, the Mona Pacifica, the idea is good, but the infrastructure doesn't change
No,
anything on
no,
on
it
the
doesn't.
on the international game, right? Because
No,
like you said, if you play on Mona Pacifica and you do really well, the Wallabies or the All Blacks are you're going to take that, right? And
yes,
then once you take that, then you're stuck like Charles Piutau and
yeah,
Malakai Fekitoa and all
yeah,
these guys. And then they end up just saying, you know what, I'm just going to go to Europe or
and play
Japan
there.
or
Yeah,
something and just play there. I got to maximize whatever economic opportunity that's coming my way. No,
yeah.
that's a fair point. I think that's a fair point. So, with that being said, what we're going to go to next is the gentleman that we were talking about earlier. And this is once again
Ooh, George Smith.
George Smith. Visit to Tonga. Apparently, the headline says visits his old high school, right?
Mm,
Toloa or Topo College, which was surprised to me. I didn't know that he had a direct relationship with Topo College. So let's just watch that real quick and see what Smitty was up to. Well, let's turn on the sound.
I have a lot of memories that of this place. Walking around the grounds just now, but then also in the past, and seeing old buildings, old places where I used to stay, and also the playing fields, and then also the church, Malton Chapel.
That's kind of cool.
mm, that is really cool.
So thank you once again for allowing us to be here on behalf of the Queensland Reds and also myself. We really appreciate your hospitality and also the lovely performance from the brass band. So thank you very much and
Malo.
Talk about one of the schools that produces probably the most rugby players than any other high school in
Oh
Tonga.
yeah.
Tolo is
Oh
a
yeah.
well-oiled machine over there, especially with rugby
Oh
and
yeah.
sport.
You know, Atele Tolo are kind of the staples, right? And then all the other high schools every so often will come up
Yeah,
with a strong team,
yeah,
but Atele Tolo are definitely the staple producers of talent.
yeah, yeah. That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it was kind of cool to see him kind of do that and go to the
Mm,
school there. So with that
mm.
being said, that's just kind of our roundup, kind of catch up on some interesting
Current
news.
events. Yeah,
Yeah, some
yeah.
interesting stuff that's going on there. Oh, actually, there's one more. There's one more. Let me see. There is one more that is kind of a little bit more politics. Where is it?
In Polynesia or
Yes,
U.S.
in Polynesia. Um, and it has to do with all the debt. China has been accused of checkbook diplomacy, right? Making friends. And I'm like, if America and Europe have a problem with that, there's an easy solution. Show up with a checkbook, man.
Book.
Like, what do you
Yeah,
expect?
yeah.
People will build relationships with other people that are helping them. That's the thing that kind of frustrates me about European and the West. It's they think that like, oh, other developing countries should sacrifice the opportunity to progress and improve their standard of oh, I'm not sharing the right page, sorry. That people in developing countries are just going
Mm,
to sacrifice their quality of life and
yeah,
economic opportunity for some silly Western quote unquote first world problem of being woke and
yeah.
blah blah blah, when Polynesians in the Pacific are just like, no man, I just want to create more opportunity for myself, economic stability. And who is coming around and helping with that? Is China
China.
building
Yeah,
roads, right? There's talking about the roads. You talk about all the harbors and stuff that they're helping develop.
mm,
And look at Tonga. Tonga's there, Samoa's there, Vanuatu. Then you have a bunch of African countries because China is investing a
yeah. A
ton.
lot.
Um,
What's that Lao? Is that somewhere in Africa? PDR?
I
What's
don't
that
know
first?
where Lao is specifically, but yeah, let me do this.
That's interesting. No, I was just gonna add on to what also for the Polynesian diaspora that's around. Most of them live in the Western countries that that kind of follow these news that why are the Pacific Islands do giving all these working with Chinese? A lot of the Chinese they have the best they have the best interest rates too, and that's why they
Yeah,
kind of work with them. And another reason why a lot of the Pacific nations, I can just speak with Tonga. Usually, when they take those Chinese, there's no really there's apparently when they talk about attachments of when they give you the money, the Chinese just want they'll give you their money, they'll do the whole pay it back and stuff. But usually, sometimes the Western countries when they give you their money, um there's some social influence and attachments. They want you to do this, like, or things that are not culturally really adhered to in the Pacific nations. But from what I hear, a lot of these, all these discrimination kind of things and all of that kind of
the
has some
woke
attachment.
ideology.
Woke,
Yeah,
the woke ideology and all of these things that I I'm pretty sure is unnecessary, that has attachments too, along with their high interest interest rates to repay them back. And like what you said, hey, if you want to, if you really care about the Pacific and helping them, open your checkbook and have a lower interest rate for
yeah.
the country so they can borrow.
No,
Yeah.
100%. That's the easy solution. So I do think I understand the concern from the West, but at the same time, see, like here, they're talking about Tonga's debt to rebuild after the burning and stuff. But like you said, an easy solution would have been provide
Mm.
a better loan.
Yes.
right? And so what do you expect countries in Polynesia to do? Just live in
Let the
poverty
people
and not
live in
yeah,
poverty. Yeah.
and so that's the kind of thing, like, yeah, and it is becoming a challenge, but at the same time, what else are they supposed to do?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit kind of, I don't know, it's kind of annoying. Oh, and it's Laos. Looks like God loves you says it's Laos, and I checked it, it's Laos, so Southeast Asia.
Southeast Asia. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know where that is. Yeah.
So really, yeah, great. You guys have a concern, but you
Mm,
guys, we gotta build infrastructure somehow,
yeah.
right? And if the West is not willing to step up and China is, well, then I guess China is gonna be the financier.
Yeah.
So
No. No.
Malo, Nelly, thank
Hey,
you.
what's up, Nelly?
So that was the last one. Just kind of interesting. It's just covering a bunch of different investments that China has had, all the relationships, right?
No,
And
too.
China
And I
is
have a
serious.
yeah. No, and I have a question too. In my opinion, the U.S. doesn't really. I mean, yes, today I'm just thinking the U.S. position because obviously the U.S. has money, right? But does the U.S. don't really care? Because I know China really cares the Pacific because they want presence. They want to be known, right? But America, with all its territories, we're talking about American Samoa, even Hawaii, Guam, Maldives, like. Do they really want to put more money into the Pacific when they already have a presence there? Maybe that's why the US
Maybe,
doesn't feel like,
maybe,
hey, they show, right, they show the empathy, but they're not willing to really write the checkbooks, right? And China, hey, China doesn't really have any territories in the Pacific. They're like, we're gonna write the check checkbooks to have a presence in the Polynesian islands.
in
But
the
that's just me.
Pacific.
I'm just
Yeah. My gut feeling tells me this, and this is just a gut feeling. The contracts and stuff that go to Pacific are so small that
mm,
corrupt politicians. I'd rather spend billions of dollars in Europe and Africa because then I can funnel 1 or 2 million to myself. Because that's really
mm,
what it, in my opinion, right?
mm,
What's 50 million, but it really has to build something rather than I send it to Ukraine and they don't know how they spend it, and that funnels
yeah,
back to me personally,
yeah,
right?
or
I
yeah,
mean, that
or
could
to a
be some of
party,
it.
or to some,
Exactly.
yeah, yeah.
Some backdoor deal, and maybe the Tonga stuff is just peanuts. And then on top of that, like you
Peanuts.
said, we already have a presence there. What's
Mm,
the urgency? But it seems like there's been a little bit of a shift because, for example, like Tonga has like a presence from the U.S. embassy, not a full
yeah,
embassy, but some type of presence in Tonga,
yeah.
and so
Yeah,
maybe
they're
the
starting to
U.S. is
care.
changing that.
Mm, mm.
All right. So the next one I wanted to look at, we're going to look at some of the comments that we've gotten recently, and it's primarily a specific comment that we've gotten.
What platforms do I,
We're going to look on YouTube.
okay. Okay.
Hmm. Let's show this for now. So this is a Grand M4371. He comments a lot, or she. They're Eastern Polynesian,
Hmm.
and I want to
Cool.
address a specific idea that seems to be a constant thing from Eastern Polynesians. Here's the comment. Let's see. Islands from Rarotonga, Tahiti, Hawaii, Fiji, Tonga, Vanuatu Islands. In oh no, that's not the one. I'm trying to find the one. Basically, the comment was regarding how Eastern Polynesia doesn't really care about who was the lead, and that right here, this is the comment.
Mm,
The only one still fighting on which island was on top is Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. you collide with each other to see which one's history is the truth. We Tahitians, Tongans, Hawaiians, Maoris don't even care who's better than who. We know our history, who ruled who, was allied. But when you got islands such as Tonga trying to drag us in and say they ruled us, is a whole different story, because my stories only talk about trading with
Mm,
one another, intermarrying from island to island, and battling from time to time, and that's about it, right?
mm, yeah,
So there's a couple things I thought, because this is kind of the theme,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
Eastern Polynesia was its own thing, right? It's just Tonga, Fiji, Samoa. And I want to address the first thing. No one is saying someone is better than someone else,
Mm,
right? We're all the
mm,
same people. That would be like, your next door neighbor saying they're better than you when you guys are cousins
yeah,
and come
yeah,
from the same family.
yeah.
So I want to address that first off. No one is trying to say someone is better than someone else. But what I will say is that kind of comment makes me think, and this is what came to my mind. How many people really think that there was an actual unified Polynesian nation?
Mm,
Right? Because what I'm getting from that kind of comment, and I see it every so often, is, are there, maybe there's a lot of people that don't believe that Polynesia was a united, unified nation, that we are just, a bunch of distant cousins, who one cousin just decided to go live on the next island and the next island. There was
mm,
no structure, there was no religious unity, there was no political, no social structure, right? Or kind of like a national cohesiveness.
mm,
um and that's kind of the feeling I'm getting, and maybe that's what the Eastern Polynesian people are feeling.
mm.
What are your thoughts? Have you heard or seen that? This is kind of a new thing I've never seen until these recent comments.
S- See, in my opinion, and this is what we're trying to to kind of rediscover or recover our history, because Eastern Polynesia can be very difficult, because you're talking about years of being colonized, right? When you're having Tonga that's never been colonized, then you have Samoa that actually, one of the few that actually fought against colonization, was independent, and they history is able to recover of how our ancient ways, because even Samoans have stories of, recognizing the Tui Tonga. And to me, in our oral history, we have lots of history relating to women and to Eastern Polynesia coming to Tonga and paying tribute. So, and it could be a thing that story hasn't passed on. When you're talking about, they're still under, we're talking about like Cook Islands, still under
Mhm.
the British Empire, which is under New Zealand, under King Charles. Then you're talking about French Polynesia, been under France since the beginning. I just went to Tahiti not too long ago with my wife, and the thing, I'm just being honest. When I go there, I never heard any Tahitian. It was straight French, right? So we're talking about generations of generations, and it's hard to break that mold. Like, and it's when you have so many generations that's been told the same story, it's gonna take a lot to really uncover the true understanding of how us as Polynesians were one nation. So in
Mm.
the new then you add into Hawaii, since the takeover, since Queen Liliuokalani, right? Then you add the Maoris with New Zealand, that's still under the British Empire, because the King of Charles is still recognized as the head state of New Zealand. So see, and that's what I'm saying, and that's what we are, just a voice to say that we were one empire in the days of old, and reminiscing about that. And then the peoples today just giving a perspective that we were one people, because we have stories of marrying high status women from those islands in Tahiti to Itonga, and not only that, their families would come and pay tribute to the Inasi, and also the Polo Polo, and that remains true, because we have villages that have very strong ties to Eastern Polynesia names, and a lot of them have we've kind of mentioned the
New
New Toa,
Toa.
which, yeah, was it Mene Hauri, which is a kind of like not a good name in Tonga, and that's the reason why Queen Charlotte kind of changed it. She was already understanding that this is probably not a good name, but that changed the name, and that kind of, if some Tongans don't know that, if they really discover that history of that's our tie to Tahiti, and even Tahitians have a hard time understanding that's our connection to them, and also with the names within what French Polynesia with Bora Bora with Vavau. That's a connection to the Vavau group islands of people. So to me, that's where the issue is. That's my opinion.
Yeah, and I've tried. I mean, because I agree, I'm definitely a believer that we were one nation, right, with unified government, leadership, religion, and social structure, with individual like adaptations, right, within those different areas. Um, we watched the video on our last live or two lives ago about Tapu Tapu Atea,
Yeah, yeah,
right? Where
yeah,
they
yeah,
said, "Oh, this is where the Chiefs went because of Tangaloa was here." And to me, when you have that type of oral history that seems to be pretty embedded,
yeah,
the question I ask myself is there other evidence that could explain that? And the thing that comes to mind is those are pretty far distant away from Tonga, and we have strong oral history that as the Polynesian nation grew, it became very difficult to come twice a year. And what
yeah.
ended up happening was regional leadership would accept tribute in specific areas, and they didn't
Mm,
have to go all the way to Tonga all the time, right? And
mm,
so I look at that and said, hey, that could possibly explain um why places like Tapu Tapu Atea, everybody remembers that. Oh, we would go here, and it was only some of the rare um ruling families that understood we are accepting this on behalf of the Tuitonga, and maybe
correct.
only they went right
Yes.
with the trip or something. But I don't know. I kind of got an
I,
interesting vibe on some of the feedback from
yeah.
our cousins in Eastern Polynesia that
Yes.
they're kind of feeling like, everybody likes the idea of, oh yeah, we're one people. But then the moment you start to provide a structure
Yeah.
of how we existed as a people, um, people all of a sudden get a little like funky. I don't know. It was
Yeah.
kind of weird.
No.
Um,
No. And I was gonna no, and I was just gonna.
it looks like Alexander just wanted to repeat like our ties to Tahiti and Tonga. I mean, I think he just wants just to kind of revisit, like you said, the marriages, some of the village names. Masi, just kind of
Yeah.
repeat that for Alex.
Yeah. So our connection to Eastern Polynesia, I think is it Ha'ameneuri Tua,
Yes.
which is
Yeah.
referred to New Toa. That's it's usually it's a frowned upon word because well, I guess in Tonga meaning, but that's our connection to Tahiti because apparently there's a place like that in Tahiti too, and maybe that could have been a spot because that's kind of located in the eastern side of Tongatapu, which a lot of the polo polo or the inasi would happen, and maybe could be a staying place for the people coming from Eastern Polynesia, maybe not just Tahiti, coming and staying there. And that name changed. I don't know when during time of Queen Salote, which is known as New Doa, and just a lot of references to Bora Bora. To its original name was Vavau. That's connections to Vava'u Group Islands, and not only that, there's a village in Samoa called Vava'u. So like these are connections that we are one people. And my question was that now that I'm remembering it, for the Eastern Polynesian cousins, if you're considered a Polynesian race, right, then you gotta go to the data point. Which settlement is the oldest? Right?
Correct.
So
Correct.
far, we've only done Nuku'deka, and that's where. And then if you start from there, then you can start putting in the puzzles because we know Tapu Tapu Atea was like a launching point, and I have my own ideas of why that's a strong story because to me that was a strong story of most of the people were picked up there to come and settle in New Zealand and more like in Hawaii and other places. But and that's why that's a strong story that's kind of kept and it
Stuck through
survived,
the ages.
stuck
Yeah.
through because it's a big thing. It was a big event, right? Of taking, you're probably moving a lot of families, a lot of people that people still remember, and that story has kind of persisted through colonization, and that's why that story still exists. And they think they're the right, they're the origin of Tangaloa. But I'm just saying, if you're considered a Polynesian in the Eastern Islands, just go to now you have the oral story. Then you're gonna go to the data point of carbon dating, which
Yeah.
is the oldest settlement. Start from there, then it will lead you to Tonga. And then when you start hearing some Tongan history of having the Inasi and Polo Polo and our connections to the Eastern Islands, then we can go from there. So, but to me, that's what I'm saying. We're all one people. Tonga was recognized as the headquarter of that Polynesian Empire, but we were all the same people. There's no way that Eastern Polynesia functioned on its own little section when we know Tonga was traveling through boats, and other the West Polynesia was like it's almost like a freeway, it's traveling everywhere. They were not just going over or doing whatever. It was all one people traveling, back and forth. But that's just my spill on that. Hopefully that Alex kind of explains our connection to the Eastern Polynesia. So
Yeah, Alex has a question here. Do you think the Maori would have come together, kapau Naea'u at Tonga Navy to Aotearoa? I mean, what are your thoughts? I think his question is saying, hey, if Tonga had maintained that relationship with Aotearoa, do you think it would have, would
yeah.
have been helpful? What are your thoughts on that, Masi?
So this is my thing here, Alex. Because of the Tongan civil wars, we're talking about 200 years of civil wars in Tonga, and then the fracturing of the Tuitonga Empire. Tonga was really shrunk its presence to pretty much, I think, to Uvea Islands, um, Fiji, and Samoa, and it was within that civil war. So you know, to me, if let's just say at the height of the Tuitonga was able to last long up to the time when the islands were being discovered by Europeans, I'm pretty sure Tonga would have been able to protect a lot of our Polynesians island sovereignty, in my opinion, of the unity. But
Hmm.
it just happened in a time Balangis were coming over when Tonga was really its influence and fracturing was happening within the Tuitonga, that its influence was really just to Fiji, the Tuna, I mean the what Uvea and Samoa. That when it really kind of fractured, and then obviously those islands were eventually France taking over Uvea and then all those other islands, and then Tonga was like, okay, we can't really do it. We can only do some ties and stuff here and there, and then we really just focus on Tonga, which
Yeah.
is we're able to survive. So
And that was barely, right? That was a lot of work, a lot of
yes,
luck, and most importantly, a lot of help from God to
yeah,
make that happen. Because even with everything that Tupo the First did, if it wasn't mercy and grace of God, it wouldn't have happened. You
yeah.
know.
No, and that's another thing, Alex. Like I said, with the whole traveling back and forth, I'm pretty sure that because the Tongans were, I don't know about you, though, were the Tongans the ones that probably were able to, like, apparently during those early like 1700s, I think the Tongans were the ones that were killing most of the Europeans whenever they kind of came to Tonga, while the other islands was more, they were more accepting and kind of mixing with the Europeans instead when they started settlements. I don't know. I could be wrong, but
Yes, they're actually, it's kind of crazy because what they found is a handful of European ships
just
that had
sunk.
the same fate like William Mariner's ship,
Mm,
right? So
mm,
apparently it seemed to be a successful formula. They
y-
almost did it to Captain Cook, almost the
yes,
same thing to Captain Cook, but they just couldn't agree on either when to have the attack or how to divide the spoils, right? But they
yes,
found multiple ships
Chips.
in different
Yeah.
areas in Tonga where it looks like the
It
Tongans
was a
did the same
normal,
thing. Yeah,
normal practice
it
to
was,
like
hey, let's
raid a ship
feed
and
them.
kill.
Yeah,
Yeah.
let's feed them, get them off the ship. We kill them and then take all the metal, take all
Yeah.
the stuff that we want, and then burn the evidence and
Yeah.
sink the ship.
Yeah. And eventually Cook got killed in Hawaii. But I'm just saying, with that information, and let's just saying the whole traveling back and forth was a common thing. If that still continued to happen, I wouldn't, I can't see a Tongan not talking to a Maori and say, hey, be careful with these guys, especially when you sign your treaty. Hey, be careful, or you know what, just get rid of them, or just be careful with bringing too many of the Europeans, and then you find out they're overpopulated. Like those kind of messaging, I'm pretty sure the Tongans would have been able to share with the Maoris to just to be more careful, right? And that's kind of difficult when you're trying to fight for your own survival in those islands. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, Malo Masi looks like Alex appreciated and said,
Mm,
Whakaofa, when I see our own people curse God for changing our culture by bringing Christianity to Tonga, claiming that things like we said before, it's if you only dig on the surface level, you come to that conclusion, Alex. But when you dig deeper, we take the position that when you dig deeper, Hikuleo is the Christian God, and really, in
mm,
many ways, we're being restored to the same
mm,
God that brought us out there.
mm.
And so it's I know some people think that we're being sacrilegious or something. I don't know, but that's something that we believe, and there's some reasons for it why
Yeah.
we believe that perspective. Hey, God loves you. I reckon Tongans came here before Maori, but like I said, can't grow
Mm,
ufi hopa and too cold. Yeah, and the other thing too, agree 100%. God loves you, and too big of a land. One of the things that, in my opinion, because when there are certain advantages to being small and isolated, right? And I think Tonga, the Tui Tonga, liked being in an isolated place. It kind of elevates, just like any person of high status. What do? They
you
put
don't know.
themselves in an
Yeah.
isolated area, right? Because of their status, quote unquote, access is limited.
No, I want to mention what God loves you with is I have some thoughts on that, because there's a there's a story of Doi going around, who was a navigator, very skilled navigator, came to New Zealand, caught a moa from New Zealand, took it to the Tuitonga, and there's a road called is it Halafonua Moa that leads up to an island where where you bury where the langi's at to that island,
Hmm.
on the maps. And apparently that was named after what Doi did. And apparently Doi also stopped over to the Cook Islands and a lot of the places in Tahiti, in French Polynesia, and Marquesas, and you brought a lot of those people to come and settle to
Mm,
New Zealand. And that's why the majority of those people have strong ties to Eastern Polynesia. But Doi was a well-known
navigator.
navigator for the Tuitonga. Yes.
Mm, yeah,
So yeah,
and
that's
see,
just
and that's
my
the thing.
that's the oral history that I've
History.
seen. Yeah, that I've heard
Yeah,
just regarding about that.
yeah, and I mean, and to be honest, the largest ships that are expressed, right, are the Tongan ships, right? Like we looked at some of the sketches
Mm,
of these Tongan ships. Was it the Lomi Peau that was the most
mm.
the largest? I mean, this thing made
It's huge.
human beings look tiny in some of the
Yeah,
sketches, right? So carrying hundreds of people and
yeah.
going long distances, and so this is kind of like very interesting to see that it could have been, the Tuitonga themselves giving direction where to move people. Interesting.
Mm.
Looks like Nacho, give him a full cup. Malo,
Malo,
Nacho.
Nacho. Malo.
Looks like Water Bears, our official
Hey,
PR. Malo,
what's
Water
up? What's
Bears.
up?
Malo, Abito, welcome. Maoris have a Hawaii and believe in many islands of the Tuamotu. There are Vaihi or Hawaii type names
Mm,
all throughout Polynesia, right? All
yeah.
over the place. It is that's one of that's one of the reasons why, um, when the Samoans say that those are all references to Savaii, our position is Tongan oral history says that Vaihi is the faraway land and that's our motherland. And
Mm.
therefore, it cannot be Savaii because that's down the road.
Yeah.
That's not the far, far, far away land. And that's why we take the position that Vaihi is the Americas and that is the faraway land, and that Easter Island was the last stop you made before you went back to Vaihi.
Mm.
Kanaka Maori and Maori sound very similar, 100%. A lot
Mm.
of relationship there. And look at opposite sides of Polynesia, right? With the
Mm.
Maori in the southern, most
Yeah.
southern point, and then on eastern Polynesia for the Kanaka Maori, very similar. Good point there, Water Bears.
Yeah.
Nacho, I heard it. Yeah, the Lomipea was massive,
Yeah.
massive, and when we say it carries over 200, that probably does not include supplies,
Yeah.
right, and other things that need to be carried in order to make long distance travel. Hey, Surfer T, welcome, welcome,
Hello, Surfer
Malo,
T.
Malo. Another comment here: Tuamotu Islands is the place from where many Maori Waka came from. Yeah,
Mm.
and that's the thing. It's kind of interesting. Like I said, I kind of got the vibes that our Eastern Polynesian cousins there are thinking that
Yeah.
we weren't a unified Polynesian nation, from kind of their explanations, but maybe because of their being far east and not being involved and being as close to the center, that may
Mm.
be another reason behind it as well. Hey, Masi, what are your thoughts on the Micronesians and how they fit into all of this? Do you feel,
Mm. Well, isn't
any
there?
thoughts?
Yeah. No, good question, Matafa. My understanding, Polynesians settled every island. We were the first people to step in the islands. We're talking about Eastern Polynesia, all the way up to Hawaii, right? Coming down to Uvea, Samoa, New Zealand, Tonga. Fiji was the only one that already had people, and I'm thinking that's the Micronesians. That's my
Mm,
understanding, right? And then the Fiji just became more Polynesian because of the mixing and traveling back and forth between Polynesians and those people in those
mhm.
islands. Um, that's just me. Also, Vanuatu also is another one. See, I don't know if Vanuatu is the same history like Fiji, if there were people there, Tua, before Polynesians got there, or did if they were like Fiji, they were just only kind of influenced when they mixed, because there's some history ties to Vanuatu. So that's just my idea of Micronesians, where we kind of have some um, mingle with them in Polynesian oral history, but yeah, that's
Yeah,
just my understanding.
and there seems to be a decent connection between the Tuimanua and Micronesians.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah.
is I guess a Tuimanua. What I saw a video, and actually maybe let's watch it since Mataafa brought up Micronesia.
Mm.
Let me see if I can find the video if I saved it. Um,
What, in Kiribati or Marshall Islands? Where was this?
it is right here. I don't know where exactly.
Mm. Solomon Islands, oh,
Johnny. I'm
Micronesia.
from Nakoro in the Federated States of Micronesia.
It says in the Federated States of
Mic-
Micronesia.
oh,
So let me bring that up, and it kind of just lines up with your question, Matafa. We'll bring it up and
mm.
take a look at it. Maybe we'll do this so that we can see it in. And he kind of gives a story of a connection to Samoa,
Mm.
in his account here of the Tuimanua.
My name is Johnny. I'm from Nakoro in the Federated States of Micronesia. And today I'm going to share the history, part of the history of Nakoro. There was two brothers, two sons of a king from Samoa. In that place they call Manua in Samoa. After the king died, the eldest son should be the king, but the younger one wanted to be the king. So what happened? They fought. And when they fought, the younger one lost the fight. Then he has to leave with his wife, his wife's father, and relatives and friends. So they prepared themselves on a canoe called Haurua in Hawaii. The canoe in Hawaii, they name it Haurua. And that's the kind of canoe that they sail from Samoa through all the Pacific, most of the Pacific Island, and finally settle in Nuku'oro.
Since the game of rugby began,
So that's kind of an
Interesting.
interesting thing.
Mm-hmm.
What wasn't very clear to me, it didn't seem like he was saying that the Tu'imanua's son that was losing the battle discovered the island. It was more like they were just trying to get out of Polynesia, away, and making sure that they weren't in anywhere that had the possibility of the Tu'imanua finding them.
Yeah.
So that's the way I kind of saw that, because a lot of people mention, the Tu'imanua is recognized in Micronesia. I mean, we don't doubt that some of our ancient ancestors were
Yeah.
traveling long distance. What we're just kind of referring to is who was the founding fathers, who were the ones that established a unified governance, who are those that provided a religious belief and the basis of building an empire.
Mm.
So that's kind of the response to that. And here's some of the questions, some comments. Micronesians may be the first ones from Taiwan. That could be right. They seem to have a lot of the Asian influence. They're smaller,
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
a little bit of
Their
an
body
Asian
structure.
influence.
Yes.
Yeah.
The only thing is they're just paku, dark over there.
Hey, Nacho, yes, the traditional chaser for the Kava's the Mountain Dew.
Oh, Mountain Dew.
And it's funny. Oh, go
No,
ahead,
I was gonna say. No, I was gonna say some of the even Uncle Norman would say this, but a lot of the construction guys that work Maka, the Tongan guys who call Mountain Dew their new mata, their
New
green
mata.
coconut.
And it's
Pass me the
funny.
new mata.
It's funny that you bring up that story, because Yate is the primary reason that I started drinking a lot of Mountain Dew, and it was with Uncle Norman and his crew,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
And they would always, you go get the soda for the crew. And I remember getting scolded once. I would be like, "Hey, what sodas do you guys want?" And they all look at me and be like, "Yana, there's only one that matters. I don't mind new mata. Go bring coconut out of
Bring
this
the
the
Mountain.
Mountain Dew."
That's the Mountain Dew. That is the favorite drink for our Tongans and Polynesians, man.
Hey, Clyde Moore, Malo Lere,
Yo,
welcome
hello,
back.
Clyde.
I found a video that ties what your father says about Maui on YouTube. The video is called Voyage of Rata and Maui. This video was confirmed with a university study in regards to Pacific cave drawings as well. Interesting. We're gonna have
Very
to look that up, and see that. Maybe I can look that up out here in the background. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Doesn't PNG hold the most ancient in what civilization? Or
I think he's kind of speaking about the Pacific. This may be related to your comment about Tonga having the oldest findings, but we're talking about Polynesia,
correct? We're
not
talking
the
about
Pacific
Polynesian.
in general.
Yes, not in the Pacific, Matafa. Sorry about that. Within the Polynesian race, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. But for those regarding the Ha'amene Uri that's referred to New Togan Tongatapu, there's a village in a region called Ha'amene, which is in Taha'a in the Tahiti Islands. So just for reference with our connections and stuff, along with Bora Bora used to be Vavau that has ties to Vavau and Vavau in Polo.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look it up a little bit more, Clyde Moore. But I got an interesting one: the Maori myth that the Bible's Hebrew Moses was Maui. Getting all kinds of interesting stuff going on.
Maria,
Um,
Maria.
mm, Visay village is the first landing of the Africans in Fiji where I stayed. Very beautiful historical place.
Mm.
There are some beautiful places in Fiji, 100%. And interesting, it seems like, yeah, and then the Fijians seem to have a pretty strong oral history that they come from Africa and even like Egypt. I've heard a couple of the Fijians say,
Yeah.
Northern Africa. So some interesting. Man, I didn't know so much people had one conversations with our Tongan royal family to make some claims on TikTok. Yeah, apparently, there's some people who have like, I don't know if it's like a weekly call with the royal family where everything is unfolded, but interesting. What you guys, Unfattable Malo, what you guys think about the North Island Maoris and South Island Maoris having different dialects? The North pronounce NG like Rangi, and the South substitute it for K like Raki. I don't know. Any thoughts on that, Masi? I don't really have a strong position one way or another. Any thoughts?
I don't know too much about that, Unfattable. I don't know too much about that, but I do know when I do hear Maori, I do hear when they pronounce the the T's like Tongans most of the time, and then sometimes they call it like, let's just say like someone will say Tangata, someone will say Tangata like a Tongan, and
Mm,
when to use it, they kind of interchange here and there, and it's just, yeah, I'm not see, but with the whole north and south, I'm not too well versed about that regarding the Maori language. But I just know there is some differences from what I heard. But my experience, there's just with the pronunciation is like Tongans, and then sometimes with the T's, the nga is the same from what I've heard, but with the they'll call it like tangata or tangata, like how a Tongan would say it. But they
okay.
in the same sentence they'll use the T like a
And the
ta
K's.
and then ta sometimes. So it's interesting.
Yeah. Here's another one. Thank you for clarifying. Is it your opinion that Polynesian Empire was originally Tongan and all other Polynesian cultures are do? And that's the thing, Matafa. I mean, it there's no other way to say it besides that, but it's not really Tongan and all other Polynesian cultures. It's all Polynesian, right? It's just unfortunate that we have to speak in Tongan, Samoan, Tahitian, Hawaiian because through colonization, the Polynesian nation was divvied up, right? And then nations formed out of that. That's why sometimes we tell people, in a sense, Tonga as an individual nation, Samoa as an individual nation, in many ways didn't really exist. Tonga is just the Polynesian nation shrunk to just those group of islands, and that Samoa was broken off. But so that's just to be kind of technical,
Yeah.
because I know people kind of feel like we're being disrespectful of, oh, we're just putting up Tonga and blah blah blah. Well, I can understand why you take that position, but that's not our intent, because reality is, if you could just imagine all of Polynesia as one country, and
Mm,
little by little we got colonized, right? When I say we, when Hawaii was colonized and Samoa and all those other pieces, that's us, right? And Tonga just happened to be the capital. It had a lot of the best ideas, the most political experience, structure, stability for the longest amount of time that it was able to survive.
mm.
But anyways, I'm getting distracted. I apologize, Matafa. To answer your question, and Masi can kind of give some areas I may be missing. But in short term, our position is the founding fathers of the Polynesian Empire or nation are Tangaloa, Maui, and the Taula, which is basically the priests. And that they first landed in Tonga, and it is their injection of the astronomical knowledge, the social structure, the political structure, and the navigational knowledge that the Polynesian nation of finding islands and settling and spreading it started from. That is
Mm.
that is our position. That's our kind of the things that we kind of base our thoughts on. We're going to go through two studies tonight. One will be a study on the Manua,
Mm.
video that goes through a study on Manua, where the Tu'i Manua lived, and they go over and talk about the residents of the Tu'i Manua. And then we're also going to look at another study that looks at one of the residences of the Tu'i Tonga and have a discussion and just kind of explore what the data points are saying. Anything I may have missed there, Masi, or anything to add to
No, no.
Matafa's
I'll
comment?
just add to your explanation. I think the best way to think about this matafa is like a tree, right? Tonga is the root, and then you grow, and then you get like, you can throw in Samoa as being like the trunk, right? And then you kind of grow with the branches, and then you get the Tahiti, then you get Uvea, then you get New Zealand, Hawaii, Marquesas, Rapa Nui. They're all part of the same family. Then when you get colonized, right? Then you get things get chopped up, the branches get chopped up, the stump is chopped, and then whatever's left, which is Tonga, which is the root of the empire. And that's just an illustration of just how the empire is. And like when we do mention that Tonga was able to survive colonization, is because we were, just because of the knowledge they were able to hold to govern. Because a lot of the Polynesian islands were taken over just because there was no structure of government. And Tonga being able to survive, that's a win for all of Polynesia because we're one nation kind of thing. And that's what I'm saying.
Mhm.
It's just we're all part of a different kind of groups of islands, but we're all come from the root. That's what we're
Yeah,
trying to.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's why we all share Tangaloa, right?
Yes.
We all share Maui. We all share a unified name for the most part on Kava. You go to Melanesia, different parts of Melanesia call Kava different things. Same thing in Micronesia. And so
Mm,
there's a cohesiveness and a uniform social, astronomical, religious aspect that the Polynesians share as a group,
yeah.
that really kind of separates us from Melanesian and Micronesians, because they seem to be much more fractured. But Polynesians in general, we exude a national, in a sense, a national identity that's shared, that's been parsed and broken up due to colonization. But like Masi said, um, hopefully that kind of gives you some context to that,
Mm,
Matafa. The Heiau in Hawaii have similar structure to Tongan fort in Uvea and parallel to the Pulemele. That is some of the things that I was thinking as well. And we're trying to find more videos and data on that, Alexander, because when you look at the Pulemele, you look at some of these maraes, and you look
mm,
at the forts that the Tongans had, that is 100% we know the Tongans built. They're not too different from what you see in Eastern Polynesia,
yeah.
right? And so there may be some crossover there. We haven't found good enough videos and content on that, but if
Mm,
when we do find it, trust me, that'll be something we bring to the table. Any
yeah.
thoughts on that, Masi?
No, no. I'm just thinking that that seems to be a common practice of building the structure, gathering a bunch of rocks, and even the Marais they have in Tahiti, the Purimede in Samoa. A lot of labor going to gathering these volcanic kind of rocks. I don't know the scientific name, but gathering these dark volcanic rocks and just piling them over, making it a huge structure, and trying to understand exactly what it happened. It could be some religious things, or it could have been a or just a memorial of a huge event, something. But yeah, we don't know exactly what it was built for.
Not 100%. Only because I'm lazy to read the online articles. So Tevita Fale got the Vaihi theory from when he was younger from the OGs, right? Yes, 100%. And we will just kind of flesh that out
Mm,
a little bit more, Water Bears. This is
mm,
not your ordinary OGs. The longest and largest settlement of the Tuitonga was in La Paja, right? And so this is where you find the most uh, dense allocation of chiefly titles within
mm,
a area, which just kind of shows that there's a complexity and a density of power. right? When there's so much power in an area that you have multiple chiefly titles within a small area, that's an evidence of concentration of power.
Mm.
But yes, these are people who descend not only from the Tuitonga, but from the various titles within, who were managing, and their ancestors were the administrative arm of the Polynesian nation. And so, that's, there's a little bit, we like to say there's a lot more credibility in the OGs in that vicinity
Mm.
than you would say typical OGs in other areas, because they would only be managing, let's say, an outer island. They would only be managing the politics and the responsibilities in that outer island in respect to
Mm.
back to the mother island, right? But these OGs in La Paja are the ones who their ancestors were managing a larger empire, a larger nation over thousands of miles. When the Inasi came, when the Polo Polo came, these are the people who were managing things and
Mm.
who had access to the ancient history, including Vaihi, where Tevita Fale received the first kind of tutoring and
Yeah.
an understanding of that theory. Any thoughts on that, Mas?
No, no, you're right. You're right. I mean, I think Dad said when he started serving kava to the OGs in Mua and La Paja area, that's when he heard the word of the elders from this area in Mua saying that we came from Vaihi, and the thing they would say is Vaihiye, Vaihiye, kind of very far, Vaihi, very far. So yeah.
This one might be a better question for you to tackle first, Masi. Now, whanongo he talanoa that another connection between Manua and Tonga is they are the only island in Ha'amoa to pronounce their T's like us. Any knowledge or confirmation on that, Masi, from your experience?
I haven't heard unfathomable. I haven't heard like I spent I haven't been to Manua, but I did spend quite a bit of time in Tutuila, which is the closest island to the Manua Islands. Um, you know, there is a different dialect of how Manuans would speak Samoan, but it wasn't like a Tongan to my understanding of how they did their pronunciation. Because you're talking about many years of being under U.S. and being being colonized, and the language started to really change. But obviously, from the records we see, people from Hawaii and other islands would communicate perfectly with Ukalala and some of the other Tongans that were in Tonga. So I don't know. I haven't heard in my experience, but like I said, I think I only came across one person that was literally from Manua that was living in Tutuila. He, we didn't talk about too much of if they were different. I just knew it was a different dialect compared to the main language of Samoan being spoken today. But that's just my thoughts.
This is hilarious. Maria. Surfer T. I don't know if you're being joking or serious, but he mentioned earlier that there's a National Geographic article he read, and they interviewed Tupo the Fourth, and he said Tupo the Fourth mentions that there are certain sailing techniques that only he and the devil knows. Oh yeah, that is hilarious. And yeah, Alex, we've seen that video of the gentleman. I forgot his name. He visits Tonga. He visits Uvea,
Mm,
and then he also goes to Easter Island. And he says, "Man, I
yeah,
can't help but see the observation." And he invites people. Maybe there should be a study
yeah,
done to think any kind of correlation, right?
yeah,
Um, Masi, how you very familiar with the Samoan culture? It looks like Wara Bears is correct, but Masi, can you give some more context to
yeah.
Mataafa's question?
Yeah, no, I'm pretty familiar with Samoan culture. Like I lived in Savai'i. I covered a lot of Savai'i. I covered a lot of Upolu, and I also lived in Tutuila. The only islands I never reached was Manua during my during my time spent in Samoa. So that's kind of that's kind of like my background.
And also, Masi's great great grandfather was full Samoan.
Yes,
So it's
and
also in the DNA, and then
also in the
also
blood.
and
Also in the
also
blood.
through his dad, right? The Tuitongas were marrying Samoans all the time,
Yeah.
and so also on the dad side, so a lot of
No.
Samoan DNA. When Masi was
Yes.
in Tonga eating the Samoan food, his DNA was like coming to full life.
Yeah. No, no, no. It was funny. And then when I eat with some of the elders just throughout the villages, when we're like having outside the jokes of the only way a Tongan can be brought down, they refer to the story of the Tunan Fata, kicking the Tongan out. And that's always fun and jokes and stuff. And then but when you like get serious talks, a lot of the Samoan elders would always refer as Tonga being, an influential place in Samoan affairs. And then when I started learning about the Salamasina, then the Tafaifa titles and how that all came to be. It's very strong influence with the correlation with the Tuitonga. So, and then I've learned little things here and there about places in Sainga. There's a place Sainga, but it's in kind of close to Apia. People always think it's a Chinese place, but it's from what I've heard with some people, it's called Saina, referring because and that place doesn't have a Fa'alupenga like most Samoans have a fa'alupega when they go and especially do greetings for ceremonial stuff.
What's a
This
fa'alupenga, Masi? Just for those who
it's
aren't familiar.
fa'alupega is a set of words of acknowledging chiefs in that area,
Oh, so to say
right?
it's kind of protocol before you
Protocol
enter. Okay.
before when you do ceremony, when you're acknowledging when your speeches these areas. Sai na is one of the places that didn't have a fa'alupenga, and the Samoans say they don't have a fa'alupenga because because that was the Tuitonga that would reside there, and we have our oral history saying there was 5 generations of Tuitonga staying in Savai'i and Upolu. So just like little nuggets that I've learned here and there in my time, spending in my time in Samoa and stuff. So yeah, just little stuff here and there.
Yeah, interesting. It's Clive Moore said that Masis are in-house undercover Uso. And Uso by language and experience, but also by genes. And I guess with me too, I know
Mm.
I shared on the last was it the last live where I pulled up
Yeah.
my 23andMe,
Tu-
showed where a lot of the DNA
Tumasanga,
material.
right? Or
Yeah.
didn't it say Tuma? And that's the Tumasanga is the kind of the region of when the Maria Toa, that's its influence, which is considered like one of the pretty much the top, right? There's four, but there's Maria Toa is usually considered the most important one. Then the Tupua, then the whole Mataafa and Tuibari Ifano, which is considered the four ones. But I'm not surprised because that's the strong connection to the Tuitonga also living there and also the Maniatoa, and that's our strong connection there
To
to
there.
the
Yeah.
Tumasanga district villages.
Yeah, and my grandma's sister, she married and lived in Samoa. Anne, remember Anne?
Yes.
She lived there, and we have cousins in Samoa that are Samoan Tongan. I
Yep.
mean, once again, man, it it's it's not a big deal, but I guess it is that we have to use Tonga Samoan stuff because in reality, we are all, I have
What?
Melanesian blood that comes from Fiji, right? Because of the Tuitonga's sister,
Mm,
he doesn't want another Tongan having too high of a social structure within his family or in Tonga. So what do? They tell the sister, you have to go marry someone.
yeah.
And typically it was a Fijian that they
Mm,
would tell them to marry
yeah.
because that helps maintain the status of the Tuitonga. So it's kind of an interesting little situation that you have going on there. Um, hey, Clyde Moore, we that's a secret ingredient that we're not gonna share, but quick question from Mataafa. Question as in Afekasi intermarriages between Samoan husband and Tongan wife creates non-Tongan children. Is every generation of that considered non-Tongan? I don't know. I don't think that's the case, Mataafa. I think if I understand correctly, as long as you can show descending from a Tongan, I think your kids can go to Tonga and get a passport. You just have to show either your wife's father, right? Your wife's father in Tonga, then that's how you draw it back. So I don't think that that's the case, Mataafa. I think that's once you're a Tongan, you're always a Tongan. And for getting citizenship, you just have to show your wife's father. And if not, then your wife's mother's father. You just have to show that. And once you show that documentation, they issue you a Tongan birth certificate. That's how I got my Tongan citizenship. Masi, same thing. We just had to show our father. And if we'll clarify that. But my understanding is you can still do that through the maternal line as well. Do you know, Masi, any kind of clarification
No,
on
no.
that?
I think I know if you don't have a Tongan father, like you said, it's a lot more work and it's a little
Mhm.
bit more strict because I know a lot of the so when a national like a non-Tongan by blood, they can get passports, but they can't get land. And I think if you have a Samoan father that doesn't, Samoan, we talking in terms of now, let's just say they live in Upolu and they have a Tongan mother and they want to get a citizenship, but they won't really have entitlements to land because that's usually an inheritance of the oldest son of a Tongan father, which inherits that. But legal stuff, so that's my understanding, Dor. But regarding the whole getting citizenship of that is that's doable. But regarding land, it's usually the only way that Tongan wife would only have it if, let's just say, the
Is through the
grandfather didn't have.
husband. Yeah.
Yes, usually through the husband. So
The husband passed away, then the wife would hold it until she passed away.
correct, correct.
Yeah. So just a follow-up question. Historically and culturally, you've said that Tui Tonga would marry Samoans, but the kids were still Tongan in them. Well, we'll clarify that a little bit. What we mean is the inheritance of father to son, it's patriarchal. And the patriarchal descendant and inheritance. So it's not necessarily that it's, you know, they're those are the only ones that are Tongan. The concept of Tongan and Samoan was very loose back then because it was all one quote unquote
Yeah.
nation. What we're mostly referring to that Mataafa, it is the line of inheritance was father to son.
Hmm.
And it wasn't like father to daughter, and then you jump back and forth. You can tie the tuitonga from father to son, father to son, if
Yeah.
that makes sense. So it's not really of saying, oh, because because it's the mom that it means that you're not Tongan. Actually, the traditional Tongan kind of thinking is your rank many
Hmm.
ways is determined by your mother, right? But the inheritance is through the father and political governance. So what would really happen is in Tongan theory is you get your quote unquote blood from your mother, but the inheritance and the political structure is through your father, if
Hmm.
that makes sense. So it's kind of different. The genetics and the political and government structure are kind of separate, is the way I understand it. Masi, any thoughts on that?
No, no, no. That's pretty correct. Because you know, more back in those days, usually, like we said, the inheritance are always with the father. The mother provides usually the her family side and influence, and also blood too when they bring. But like usually your inheritance are always through father to son, and then of course colonization happened. Tonga has to create laws, and today it's those that inheritance comes from your father. That includes land, your
Mhm.
plot of land, and areas that your family has had for generations, and that's why it's come through that. Samoa's way of doing things, just like the Tuikanpolu used to do of old,
The
is
voting, yeah.
elections. Yes, elections, and it's not really a whole clear cut like father to son. It can be, that's why they have like female matais, or females can have positions of high ranking here and there, but usually it's a patriarchal thing in the Tongan or Tongatapu kind of way of doing it.
Not
So
100%. We're trying to chip away. This is great questions. I really appreciate the questions and interactions here from everyone. Um, let's see. I heard the reason for rocks all over the place, like the Tarietumu fort, was to slow down the enemies if they were to rush the fort because they were la'ivae, running on sharp. It could be. Some people are saying that they could have been defensive structures.
Hmm.
That may have been the case, especially when you have guys like it looks like Kaulufonua Fekai after the assassination of his father. It seemed like Homeboy took a little bit more of a
Yeah.
military force
Yeah.
approach, where it seems like before that it wasn't so militaristic. It was
Yeah.
more through,
Genes.
leveraging the
Yeah.
religious power and the familial relationships
Yeah.
to govern. But kind of Kaulufonua Fekai said, yeah, we're taking a different route this time.
Yeah. No, no, and I'll just add into that. It seems like from what we've kind of discussed to a Kaulufonua Fekai, with him and his five generations, and even the next Tuitonga title holder after him was what Ha'avuhufaka or something. You're talking about like this. It seems like that five generation was very material, like not material, militaristic, uh,
Militaristic, yeah.
militaristic. That's what it seems like because it seems like
Yeah,
the
it was
fort was building
Ha'afuhuvaka.
Ha'afu'uvaka. Yeah.
Yeah, so
You're talking
yeah.
about that five generation. That's and it seems like that's when the forts were starting to really build up. The Purimere. Now Purimere, maybe Purimere was like a fort or something. Then you get the Uvea fort popping up, and then you're probably getting other forts around Polynesia start going up. And I feel like during that five generation of Tuitonga, it was just full on military engagement, and it was just like show of force probably. And then, but because of the assassination, that's probably what drives it. But yeah.
TN4. Um, is Clyde Moore. I have a whole wing of my family in American Samoa. And that's the thing, dude. I watched this video of this Samoan girl, and she was in shock because she did her DNA, right? And she thought she was 100% Samoan, which it doesn't really exist because we had our families going all over the place, marrying.
Yeah.
Um, and she was almost more Tongan than she was Samoan,
Mm,
right?
mm,
And she was kind of in
yeah.
shock. But the reality is it's the same people. It just
If you,
happened that she picked up more of the DNA markers from over there.
yeah, no, and that's probably good. She probably after I'm telling you, Dua, after that discovery, she's probably gonna learn some history, right?
Mhm.
Gonna go figure out Polynesian history because yeah, people will take a shock to that when you don't know much about your Polynesian history. Then yeah, I can see that shocker on her face.
Um, just my opinion, point of view. I have heaps of cousin friends that are Afekasi Tonga Ha'amo. I don't know why, but growing up, they seem to be more in tune with their Tongan culture and speak more Tongan. That's been kind of my observation too. Not always, but on average, that seems to be the case. Um, but hey, that's just one-sided observation there. Another question here, Masi, you can tackle. Besides Tonga having the political structure, what are your thoughts on what mental advantage the Kautonga had to be the force they were?
Mm. Well, I think a perfect advantage is when right when you've kind of run a Polynesian nation, a vast nation of what bigger than most countries in land size, right? If
Yeah,
you use the ocean, you're talking about a very sophisticated, complex situation that you've dealt with many times. And the perfect question is when is it Pau Tuitonga Pau when he came approach Cook,
James Cook.
asking
Yeah,
James Cook, what are you doing here? You know, so I think that's a huge to me that's a huge benefit of Tonga just surviving colonization is just because of that knowledge that's passed down from Paulahi, the Tuitonga, from his understanding and that knowledge being passed down. So that to me that was the biggest advantage, and that advantage, and then we've kind of touched upon being able to transition power to the Tuikan Polu and how that event kind of played out, and then what made Tonga today, and how having the Tongan constitution, which is the oldest in the southern hemisphere, other than maybe Argentina, but that's pretty remarkable for our people. But to me, it's just that mental side of knowing who you are, what your capabilities are, and understanding when you see new faces come over, they're doing the same thing what you used to do when you went around all of the Pacific. And I'm not surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if our people went. They went all the way to Japan and China, and that's a different set of people and stuff. And like I said, when we talked about Tongans, really they were not in awe when the Palangi showed up, because they were used to seeing different people, in my opinion, and having that knowledge is probably the biggest factor.
No, 100%. And that's kind of the what we're talking about. Like Mussy was mentioning earlier, there are certain advantages of being at the root. You're exposed to more ideas, you're exposed to different ways of thinking, and ideas that are brought from throughout the nation. Like we talked about, all like in Rome, all roads led to Rome. And what does
Mm,
that mean? That not just means like financial, right? And political, and any type of other material advantage, but it also means where ideas come as well, right?
yeah,
When let's say one of the islands discovers something new, something that works, when they would come to Tonga, obviously they would be like, hey, look
yeah,
at this new thing,
mm,
right? Look at this new thing. And everybody's like, oh man, that's awesome. It's like, hey,
yeah,
look, we found this huge bird in New Zealand.
yeah,
Look at what we brought. Like, check this thing out. We never seen this before. So
mm,
it's not that we're saying that somehow magically that the Tongans had some kind of superpower, whatever. It was just a product of being at the root, and that has certain
yeah,
advantages. And
yeah,
and it's no different than like the next generation who has more access to certain technology, right? It's just by pure exposure,
mm,
long-term exposure, that they develop these advantages. And we're all products of our time and our location. And so hopefully that kind of gives you some response there, some good feedback on that, Alexander. Well, and this is when you say kind of like the aura and so forth, Alexander, it's I truly believe this. It's understanding who your ancestors were and what they did gives you a lot of confidence, right?
mm,
There's a reason why there are genetic advantages, right? If your dad played in the NBA
yeah.
or the
That's a good
NFL,
example.
right?
Yeah,
You not only get the genetic advantages of height and strength, but it's the knowledge. That's the most important part. It's the knowledge that your father can transfer to you. And all the things that took him 5 years to learn, he can teach you in six
yeah,
months, 2 months,
yeah,
right? So really a lot of it is just being from the root that has a huge impact on giving you, quote unquote, the belief that you
yeah.
can go and do something. Any thoughts on that, Mas?
No, no, I agree. I was gonna use the sports analogy with the whole your dad being an NFL, and if you're the son of an NFL player, you definitely
More
you're
than
gonna feel
likely,
confident
yeah,
entering high school football. Like, dude, I already know my dad's NFL. I know what to do. Like, you're gonna be a very confident person.
yeah. Any thoughts on this, Masi? Here's Nacho. I thought I was 100% Tongan until I found out my great grandpa is from Kanukupolu. Now I believe I have Samoan Toto. High probability, wouldn't you say, Masi?
High probability. We're talking about when the Tuigang Polu um started. We're talking about a mass migration, specifically in Upolu, of thousands. And we're talking if we're talking about warriors coming in those big boats, I'm talking about maybe 500 people coming. That's just one trip, and we're talking about many trips from Upolu coming to
Over
settle.
hundreds of years,
Yes, because if you think about it, when the Tuikon Polo was created, it needed followers. It needed loyal people to follow them. So obviously, you're gonna get that people from Upolu come settle the west side of Tongatapu, and because the Tui Tonga and Tui Hatagalawa were probably taking over a lot of the people doing their work. People that was already been in Tonga, so they're not gonna
take away
neglect
from them. Yeah.
neglect their duties that they've been doing for thousands of years within their family to go serve one of the lesser chiefs of in that side. So obviously, that's why they brought so many. They married high noble women in Upolu and brought their whole families and extended families with
Yeah.
them.
It seems like the greatest weapon for politics is back then, and maybe even still now, is marriage.
Yep.
You it's a fast track to build that relationship and find loyal people on your side.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna say, even in today's modern marriages, I hear some Tongan friends who they're the older son. Their parents don't want the oldest son to marry somebody who's number three of the kids. They want them to marry another
Number
oldest
one.
daughter of somebody else because that's a high influence person that gonna help the family. Like even in today,
In the
within Tonga, it's a big deal.
Yeah,
Their firstborn, first girl or first boy, or
who
the
they marry.
who they marry. Like parents have a big influence. I won't say arranged marriages, but it's just say it's a huge influence.
Whatever is that very next thing from arranged, whatever you want to call it, it's only 1 degree away from arranged.
Yeah,
That's what it is.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
Not 100% water bears. No one is 100% anything anymore. Throughout Polynesia and now in the world that we live now, around the world, right? I mean, it's kind of cool. I've seen half Tongan, half Japanese, Chinese. I mean,
Yeah.
we're all over the map. Once heard the Masai system was installed by the Tuitonga. Have you guys heard of this? Best of luck. What are your thoughts on this, Masi?
Installed by the Tui. I don't think so. I think the Matai system was really installed, especially when the presence of the fracturing
Yeah,
of the Tui Tonga was not in Samoa. And Maria Toa really kind of started that with the Tuambasanga district. And that's how the Matai system kind of really started. And probably the Matai system is really what many of the Polynesian family really functioned in, except the Kamehameha that really took the stance of coming from Kona, which is Tonga, you can kind of say in the big island of Hawaii, really kind of taking a stance of kind of carrying out like
I'm
a
gonna
Tui
unify.
Tonga,
Yeah,
unify my islands here. I'm not going to function like a Matai. But Matai system, to my understanding, was created especially when the Tui Tonga's presence was not strong in Samoa.
no, 100%. I agree. That was to fill the void of the Tuitonga's
Yes.
unified leadership, and in many ways, it's an ingenious system because it allows for stability. Because if you don't come up with a system that shares the power, what leads to war, right?
Mm,
It's going to lead to, if we're not finding out a way where we can manage and what we call decentralize the power, and it's very difficult. That would be a great thing to try and understand how really the Matai system came to be without breaking into
mm,
war. Like that to me is a very interesting thing. That's not an easy thing to achieve. And it would be kind of interesting to understand how that system came about. And as we mentioned in some of our other podcasts, Matafa, the development of that system is actually, once again, one of those ideas
mm.
that saved Tonga in the long run,
Yeah.
right? Because
Tui
Tupou the
Kaupolu.
first
Yeah.
did not have direct inheritance to the Tui Tonga or the Tui Hatakalaua. However, he could get access to the Tui Kanukupolu if he could get the votes necessary, right?
Yes.
And so, actually, that's what's kind of interesting. And that's why we're saying these new ideas that were developed in Polynesia, the Polynesian nation, these ideas always made their way to Tonga. And that's what allowed Tonga to survive.
Mm,
Because if Tupou the first did not have the Tongan version of the Matai system in the Tuikanukupolu, highly unlikely he would have been able to consolidate enough power to unify Tonga. But then what does he do once he unifies Tonga? He reverts back to the Tui Tonga and the Tui Hatakalaua method of inheritance, not by voting system. So
mm.
those are kind of the interesting kind of little tidbits that
Yeah.
really, honestly, I never thought of. But one of the things that came out of the conversations here on the podcast that were kind of like interesting tidbits to kind of discover together here.
Yeah. No, I was just gonna add on to it with the Matai system because that's what saved Tonga because that's what the Tui Polu exercise of passing authority of the Tui Polu title. But it's funny once the Tupolo first was installed as a Tui Polu through the Matai system, right? He reverted back to what the Tui Tonga and Tui Hatagalawa have been doing with the father to son inheritance. And not only that, the guys who the noblemen in Tonga that supported the Tui Kalupolu, even their titles are going from son, father
Yeah,
to son. So it's not like how Matais run it now with certain families having like a vote and they have
voting
to come and
amongst
agree.
themselves.
So I just find that very interesting. So obviously it works, and then people are just going, oh, we'll go back to what the Tuitongas do with going. I think they just wanted it's easier to consolidate power that way,
Power.
maybe that
Yeah,
that way. So yeah.
yeah, 100%. George, very important to go to your family reunion so you don't marry a cousin you never knew or knew about. Yeah, well, I tell you right now, you know what's funny is they know about the cousin, but they still have the marriage.
They still
As- but this comes back to like what you said, Masi, right? As long as the
yeah.
mom and dad of both sides think, hey, politically and
Yeah.
strategically, this makes sense. Oh, we're not that close. But trust me, if they don't agree with the politics and the
Yeah.
strategy, all of a
Yeah.
sudden it's like, oh, you guys are cousins and you grew up
Yeah.
together. We
Yeah.
can't have
Yeah.
this.
They'll
We
they'll
can't
think of
have
all
that.
the excuses. Yeah.
Hey, yeah. I mean, we just mentioned that and discussed that, George. 100% agreed. That is
Mm,
definitely an idea that came from Samoa, and it came at the right time and played a critical role in allowing Tonga to maintain independence. So, all right, I think we've kind of burned through
nice.
going through the comments. So the next piece is we were able to find a video that let me see if I can pull it up. A video that discusses an archaeological study that was done in Manua.
Mm,
Let me see to discuss. Oh, let's go through a couple more comments here that are popping up. Oh, Yahweh. Clyde Moore and Nacho to join and sing a song. Shh. Oh, Yahweh.
Maria.
Let's think about that a little bit more. Number one, make sure it's an appropriate song. And number two, I'm okay as long as the banjo is not too loud. If the banjo is not too loud from Nacho, we might make that happen.
Maria Gautama.
Oh, Yahweh. Water Bears, you're being promoted to Hiva
Oh,
Solo.
oh shit. Takwe. Water Birds didn't discuss with the other guys. Ano to tahabes yan na.
Manua has high mountains as the Langis or Langis metaphorically, but Tonga Tapu has no. Agreed, Noah. No pushback there. Tonga is pretty much as flat as a pancake. But yeah, it's interesting. Well, I mean, and we'll go through this, Noah. We have a video that we'll walk through, and we'll see what the scientific evidence is found regarding the Tu'imanua and what they find. Let
Mm.
me just pull up the video here real quick. So never had the
Good
chance,
question.
Masi,
Good
to
question.
go. You never had the chance to go to Manua while you were there.
No, no.
Was that part of the mission?
Yes, yes, it
Okay.
was. It was just during that time because Mano is very difficult to get to, and I guess they didn't have any missionaries. It's not all the time; it's always open because
Mm.
usually those Matai rules and stuff can only have certain times when missionaries can go and preach, and then sometimes the chief don't want LDS missionaries; they want to keep their church there. So it was kind of those
Oh, it's a little
politics.
bit more political then, huh?
Yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, we got the video up here. Like I said, Society for American Archaeology. So this is pretty reputable, right?
Mm,
This is not Pita and Sione doing excavation.
mm,
These are pretty legit. Um, and once again, it's archaeology of the Luatele crater,
mm-hmm.
ritual and prestige of the Tu'imanua Ta'u Island, American Samoa. So that's what this video is. We'll kind of watch through it and do some reaction and have some discussion as we go through it.
Let's go.
Joel Klernick. I think that's the guy. Um,
Is this him? Is this Joe?
yeah.
Oh, I can't hear it, Dor.
Oh, you can't hear it?
Yeah.
Dang it. Dang it. Dang it. Dang it.
Can you hear it?
I can hear it. And that is a problemo, people. Um, hmm.
Technical. Bear with us, my
We
viewers.
have
Bear
some
with us. Bear with us.
technology issues. The thing is it'll show. I had this issue the other day. You know what? Let me try sharing the whole screen.
That's
Man.
interesting. It will play to you, but it won't come through to us and the viewers.
Oh, you know what? I have to add a video. I know what I need to do. I need to upload it apparently. So anything, let's see. Anybody have any questions? Let me pull up a question. Masi, read that.
Okay. Yep.
And kind of discuss that while I try to upload the
When
video.
I asked native Melanesians and Micronesians if they knew Tuitonga and they don't know what the hell is Tuitonga. And yes, well, as I said, Tuitonga, in my opinion, was the Polynesian Empire. Micronesians and Melanesians were really kind of outside that scope. There probably some stories there, but like I said, a lot of Melanesians were, you know, occupation were colonized during that time, and probably those stories didn't come through. But obviously, Melanesians had stories of the Tui Manua going around with them. Same with Fiji. Fiji's a bit different just because of the vicinity to Tongatapu. Fiji, strong connection to Melanesians, Micronesians. There were already people there when Polynesians settled the islands, and because of mixing with Polynesians, they became part of the Polynesian kind of nation, if you were to say, culturally, and also um, the marriages. So, I'm not too sure with the Vanuatu. I know there's stories of Vanuatu of Polynesians' presence there, but yeah, I'm not too sure with the Melanesians and Micronesians with their connection. But that's my thoughts there. I don't know if you have anything to add, Dua.
No, I agree. I mean, and it looks like we have to upload and do some export the file. Nothing like
Maybe
doing it
another
live.
time. Maybe another time.
Well, no, it's converting it right now. It's converting it right
Oh,
now, but we
okay,
can
okay,
discuss.
okay, okay.
I mean, well, first thing, Noah, I kind of feel like you're being a little hostile, right? Maybe overly agile, but I mean, yeah, I mean, we wouldn't expect. I mean, you can go to Fiji, and Fiji is Melanesian, and they definitely know about Tonga.
Yeah,
So if we're
yeah,
trying to be technical here, then one could say yes, Micronesians. Yeah, I mean, it seems like once again, the Melanesians do not have the same cohesive structure as the Polynesians, and the same thing with the Micronesians. Um, so yeah, so that's the thing is, yeah, that would fit because there's not the unification and the um consistent behavior and language and religious beliefs. So one wouldn't
correct.
expect that from the Tuitonga and so forth.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, hey, yeah, wouldn't be surprised, Matafa. Maybe it isn't the right word, but the saying is you gotta use the words that come to mind. Um,
Mhm.
let's see. Eh, oh man, everybody is on top of it. There's like aggressive, right? It was trying to make a rhyme, but it obviously failed, my brothers. Want to read that comment, Masi, while I check if the
Yep.
video conversion is done.
Some of these, this is from Clyde Moore. Some of these other islands barely have their own history. Their deities change with whoever's ruling. They have no order in their society like others do. So yeah, I mean, like I said, I'm not too familiar with the the other Pacific islands, like the Micronesians and the Melanesians, love their own history. Like I said, to me, my knowledge, every aspect of those places have been colonized. So obviously, there's been interruption into their understanding of their ancient history. But Fiji's one is pretty understandable because of the ties to Polynesia and Tonga. Being part of Polynesia, being able to avoid colonization, was able to help kind of start and understanding our origins of our history. So that helps understanding our society, what it was like back then, and along with the recordings of people like George Vason, to understand our history, and also just our way of life, especially in the culture. And now new scientific data points helping us to understand our ruins more also helps rediscover our history. But yeah, that's what I
Okay.
have. Unless you have anything, Dua.
No, I mean, looks like the video's downloaded. It's converted. No,
A good,
that's the thing.
yeah,
It's
good
looking
question.
at a pattern. It's looking
Mm,
at a pattern, and the patterns that we see in Polynesia are not evident in Melanesia and Micronesia. And actually, saying that the Tui Manua is tied to Melanesia and Polynesia to me is actually a knock against the Tui Manua, because that means they could not exhibit order, right? And
mm,
establish order. If you're saying, oh, the Tui Manua is influential and created all this organization,
yeah.
well, then why isn't the same organization found in Melanesia and Micronesia?
Mm,
Obviously, maybe the Tui Manua did visits there. We don't deny that. We know that Tui Manua existed,
yeah.
but looks like some of the viewers here have some other comments in regard. It is said that Mafu and 70 Tongan warriors taken to the Solomon Islands to cut sandalwood and murdering natives at the same time. This all happened before his Fijian Lao conquest. Like you said, there's a bunch of different oral history on that.
Mm, yeah.
Brown Monk seems like the Solomon Islands was a popular location. Brown
Mm,
Monk says the
that's good.
Solomon Islands has an old song that sings about the Tongans coming to take them away and unalive. Wow. Yeah. Once again, man, interesting.
Mm,
Interesting.
mm, mm.
LOL ta kita Masi. Oh yeah, well, Masi, I didn't know you played the guitar, Masi.
I
Is this
wish.
a new?
Hey, here's the thing about the Fale family. None of us really play any music instrument. I married my
Uh,
wife. She's a pianist. She's really good at playing and stuff. But that's one weakness the this Fale family have. We cannot even play or even sing to a good way. But maybe we've gotten better. But from my understanding. But Kataki, God loves you.
oh man, this is getting magical, because now the file I downloaded says it's not even recognizing that. Oh, you know what? I have to share. I see what it did. Okay. It converted it so I can play it on a window,
Okay.
on a window here, rather than the actual file. So we're gonna stop the screen share. Here's one more question from
Yeah.
Mataafa while I finalize
Okay.
this, Masi.
If you guys believe Hikudeo is the god of Abraham, would you consider our people monotheistic?
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, I would say so because that's my understanding. Because Hikudeo is, if you literally translate Hikudeo, the voice, it's a the that's what its translation. And if you go back through the scripture, as God is always described as the voice, and that's what's a big indication of what led our people to settle the islands, being the first people to settle the islands in
Mm.
the biggest ocean on earth. And in order to do that, they were guided by Hikudeo. And yeah, and there's some other common practices from the oral history, especially in Tonga with circumcision. that was practiced with the believers of Hikudeo. Would go trace back to the Jews, that it was in order to be what considered like the follower of Hikudeo. The Jews, love them, were identified with the males being circumcised, which is a big deal. What Tongans do, and still do today, as a big deal. So yeah, I mean that's my thoughts to it. Unless you have anything you
No, I
wanted to
agree.
add.
I mean, there's a little bit of a debate on whether the Jews were really monotheistic or not. That's a
Mm,
whole different story. But in the sense
okay.
of we believed in one true God that we were to worship, yes, Hikuleo was the God. That is the God who brought our ancestors to Polynesia.
Yeah.
So in that sense, 100% agree. All right,
Yeah.
let's. Oh, you had another comment to that, Masi?
Yeah. Well, and then I was gonna say, then the definition and the whole worshiping of and recognizing what Hikureo is kind of really deteriorated with the fracturing and crumbling of the
Yeah,
Tuitonga Empire. And then Hikureo, I think some people have referred it to a f- to
a
a
goddess
first
instead of a
fahu.
god. Yeah,
Yes, the first fahu and the female kind of thing. I was like, we don't take that position. It was more Hikureo. Definition of Hikureo is the voice, which is more ties to God of Abraham.
yep,
So
100%. Let me know if you hear sound, Masi.
yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Not the best video, but it'll
Mm,
work.
yeah.
Hello, I'm Joe Plank, and I want to introduce my fellow the co-authors of this paper.
Oh, what happened?
Number one, Skeuli Temese. She's the former head of the Samoan Languages Department at the National University of Samoa, Center for Samoan Studies. I also want to, the second or the third author is Epifania, or Epi Tuai. She was the senior lecturer of archaeology and cultural heritage at the National University. She's now the director of archaeology for both the American Samoa Port Authority and also the American Samoa and Federal Aviation Administration in American Samoa, Pago Pago. Also, the fourth co-author is Mohammed Harun Sahib. He's a lecturer in archaeology and cultural heritage at the National University of Samoa Center for Samoan Studies. The focus of our
So, in short, these are legit archaeologists, academics, and two of them are respected academics in Samoa.
Mm,
paper is Ritual and Prestige in the Support of the Dynasty of the Tui Manua. And what's incredible about this dynasty is it covered 3 small islands, but this dynasty began sometime in the 14th, 15th century AD and continued.
Okay, that's a big deal.
that is a big deal
Why is that a big deal, Masi?
because that doesn't predate the Tuitonga Empire by a lot, right? And
Yes.
there's no way I think we've kind of touched on it. We kind of gave the benefit of the doubt that it could have been a person of high rank from the Tangaroa before the Tuitonga
Yeah.
kind of started. But now these people are obviously saying with some Samoan or people from Manua or American Samoa
From a
that are
ruin, right?
from a
From an
ruin,
actual
right?
site. Yes.
Ruin that's probably advising that this is probably true. So obviously it's kind of come back to our idea. The more we talk about this, Tua, is this is this could be during the Tuitonga time of maybe a close relative of a Tuitonga title holder that went and settled in Manua. But yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah.
Now they're giving timelines, yeah, or time
Exactly.
frames.
And this is, you know, this is why we have these conversations and we talk about these things. And like we said, he also just mentioned dynasty over 3 islands. Right Now, we can debate as to how or why they came to that conclusion, but let's just, I mean, I have been scouring the internet for studies. I can tell you right now, I can find a ton of studies on Tongan ruins and dating and radar scanning and those dates. It's very difficult to find some of the studies that are done on the Tu'imanua, right? This is why Grok, when we asked Grok, the
Grok AI.
on the AI, and we said, hey, Grok, can you search all the internet and let me know which dynasty or which empire actually probably really existed? And even Grok admits there is way more scientific data of the Tu'i existing as an empire than the Tu'imanua, because the Tu'imanua is primarily only oral history. And even that oral history is contradicting, because you can find certain oral history even within Samoa that's contradicting. This is why, like you said earlier, Masi, multiple data points gives clarity, right? When it's just oral history and you're bouncing off of you and your buddies in a little corner, all of a sudden you can build up an empire that really didn't exist, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And we'll come back to our prestigious guests that we had to convert the file to.
To the early 20th century, a period of over 400 years.
Okay. So right there, at what they're saying is the Tu'imanua, and this is all based off of their studies of the Tu'imanua settlement, where there was a, we'll let them go through the data, but they're saying their finding is Tu'imanua 1500s, only over 400 years, which fits some of the work you've done, Masi, to look at the dates, right? Look at the lines and give it like, what was the factor? Typically 25 years or
25 years for
25,
each
30
title
years
holder.
of ruling. And even then was falling short. So, I mean, once again, this is the thing that is just, it's kind of like, I don't know, it's a little exhausting, because every time we bring data to the table, and we're not trying to be rude, we're trying to find truth here, and we're accused of being disrespectful. We're accused of,
not loving, not being loving, not being kind. We're not kind.
We're not.
Hey, but this is our philosophy. It's good. It's important to be kind and loving, but at the same time, you need to have truth when you love.
With the truth.
Have truth.
I'm loving you with the truth.
Correct. Correct.
And so, and even a curse. One, some people were joking about TikTok and the heavy treatment we get there. Someone was like, "Man, you're gonna get cursed. Curses are real." And I was like, I went home.
We did. That's right. That's right.
Yes. Brown Monk, 15th century, where everyone else is saying, guess who they're saying was at the height of their governance and empire in the 15th century?
The
Tu'i. They're saying the Tu'i was at its height at that point, right? So, we're just trying to follow the evidence, and we granted we know that the scientific evidence isn't perfect, especially when they try and go into the oral history, right? But in regards to carbon dating and putting dates and timeline, scientists are decent. Even then, it's not 100% accurate, but it's a lot better than just oral history on its own.
And that's an example of why the dating is only going to get better as long as we get better technology. Because now they're even saying the dating with the Ha'amonga is probably not correct, and it's going to probably even go further. So
even further,
I mean, but we work with what we got. That's what we're saying.
Yeah.
Whatever technology we got.
Yeah, 100%.
The area of our focus is Luatele, or the interior of a dormant volcano. It's also known as Judd's Crater. The Samoan archipelago, it comprises from west to east, Savaii Upolu, and then Tutuila. And then as you proceed east, there's the Manua group, comprising 3 islands, Ofu, Olosena, and lastly, Ta'u, which is the farthest east. Now, Luatele is the dormant volcano south of Fitiuta and in Ta'u, and it's hexus by a rather steep climb. And then once you get to the lip, you go into the interior. And our survey was a phase 1 archaeological survey covering 50 acres. Now, I want to describe a little bit about not only the archaeological features, but also the tala, or the cultural histories, where the elders in the Samoan community in Fitiuta described what happened, or what these features, the functionality of these features. First, there was on the rim of the volcano, there were long defensive walls, and those were defined as the solo tanata, which is the line of people. Next, there were a series of 3
See, this is interesting, assuming that their assumption is correct, that
Mhm.
these are defensive structures. Why is there significant defenses in the Tu'imanua's homeland?
Yeah.
If they were governing a vast empire. That when you go to Mu'a, it's not a defensive structure. Even when Tupou the First was conquering all of Tonga, Mu'a did not have a fortress,
Yes.
a kolotau,
That's
because
Yes.
because why? My favorite phrase, because it was the sacred ground. Tupou the First never dared to attack the Tuitonga because it would cause too much problems for him, because it would potentially cause a unification of everyone else to gather behind the Tuitonga because of the respect, because you're looking at a line that has been in power for thousands of years.
Yeah.
So that's another interesting question that I don't understand. If the Tu'imanua was this great empire, right, and it had this great influence, why is his primary residence a defensive structure?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So that to me has some questions that caught my attention, which was kind of like, well, this doesn't seem to make
Mhm.
sense. But he also could be misunderstanding it. Right. I don't
Mm.
know. I'm just saying
No.
if he's correct. Any thoughts on
No.
that, Mussy?
Yeah. No. Good point. That's the unique thing about the Mua, because that was the residence of the Tuitonga and the Tuihatagalawa. There were no forts, which forts was very common in the whole, I think, from Pea onwards to the west side, which is the Hihifo side, and also to Nuku'alofa, which were common to have defensive forts of always kind of battling with people. Fina Ugalala would come and do his raids. Tupo the first, the Tu'ihatagalawa would come and do its raids and stuff, and also in the other islands in Vava'u and Ha'apai. But that's another evidence of to suggest that you know the headquarters were in Mu'a in Tongatapu and not in Manua, from what they're
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah.
Defensive structures.
And this is the other thing. There's 2 things that explains as well, Masi. And then Mataafa, we'll get to your question here in a second. The Tuitonga did not have to rely only on military power. There was a religious component to the Tuitonga's power, and that's why he didn't have to have a defensive fort, because a lot of the recognition and the power that the Tuitonga had was because of his descending or being the heir from Tangaloa. And that ties to Mataafa's question here. Brothers, I'm trying to grasp the control concept. Can accept Tuitonga to be older, but how does that mean unified Polynesia under Tuitonga? The whole legitimacy of the Tuitonga derives, Mataafa, by being the heir of Tangaloa. That Tangaloa, in our perspective, resided on Tongatapu, in Tapuhia or Langi, and when the Tangaloa line ended, he bestowed the inheritance on Aho'etu. And that's really what allowed the Tuitonga to leverage that influence or that inheritance to say, you guys were all unified under Tangaloa. I'm the heir,
Hmm.
right? I am the continuation of that authority. And that's why some people viewed the Tu'itonga as a demigod, right? And so forth, even though that is just long story. That's outside of Tonga and a lot of things, because we say Tangaloa wasn't a god. The god was Hikuleo. Tangaloa was a man, and he had a son named Ahoetu, who he bestowed and created a new title. No different than the Tui Tonga created the Tui Hatakalaua, and then eventually the Tui Kanukupolu by the Tui Hatakalaua. So that is how the it's not that the Tui Tonga went and created this unification. The Tui Tonga leveraged the unification under Tangaloa to continue the rule and the governance. Any thoughts on that, Masi?
Yeah, well, just to add another evidence of the unification, when they would have the polo polo and a nasi, there we did a video of this Mataafa. We did a video of this of the findings of people doing archaeological findings in the ruins in and places in Tonga. 60 or 80% of the materials that we're finding in Tonga Tapu were from Eastern Polynesia, from Samoa, Hawaii, from different places, even up to some places in Melanesia. So that's another indicator of the vast influence and unification of other islands coming to Tongatapu to pay tribute in the Inasi and Polopolo. If that answers helps to kind of clarify your question.
Yeah, 100%. Malo, Wada Bears, faded but still answering strong. Still answering strong, Wada Bears. Malo.
Malo, whatever.
Say lupes or pigeon catching mounds. This feature was defined by David Herdrick, who was the former American Samoa Historic Preservation Officer. And these.
So those star mounds that are found all throughout the other areas on Samoa, once again, they identify as pigeon snaring.
Yeah.
Right? The Sia Lupe, which that's exactly what the name says. Right?
Yeah.
Were areas, these were star-shaped features where different chiefs of different ranks, the Matai level was the talking chief, the Ali'i were the higher chiefs, and then the Tui was kind of the paramount chief, and they competed with each other in pigeon catching. They hid behind blinds on the edges of these rays, and then with a long net captured pigeons, and the one who captured the most pigeons was the individual that was to receive the most mana. And we'll talk about what mana means. We also have a very long, near the rim of the volcano, we have a very long cave extending at least 142 meters. And this was an area where Va'atusili, a demigod, demi-deity, spent 3 nights in the cave.
Have you heard of that history, Masi, or that story?
No. I'm not too familiar with that story.
Okay. Yeah, I never heard it either.
Eventually became a giant, defeated his sister's betrothed, which was the Tuifiti, or the paramount chief of Fiji. He defeated all of his forces, only to have his sister relent and say, "No, I want to marry Tuifiti." And so he went back to the mountain and turned into stone or faded away. So that's what you have on the rim of the volcano. Now, once you get into the interior, you have the great mound, or the burial mound of the Kiasa of Tui Manoa, the originator of Tui Manoa Moa, the originator of the dynasty. And then surrounding it, you have a ray.
So once again, they're bringing this information off of the original Tui Manua. So that's why they're saying 1500s, 400 years, because they're saying this is the original Tui Manua where it started. And from him all the way until the last Tui Manua, that's the timeline that they're establishing there.
Yeah.
of stone walls, and on either side of those, you have a series of small piles of stone. And we're going to get into the functionality of that, but according to the cultural legends, these comprise burials of individuals that were close to Tuimanua that wanted to be buried with him. And the closer they were, the more they were buried closely with him.
So remember that. This is another interesting thing.
Are these burial grounds too? Where they're showing kind of thing? These rocks here?
So the major one they think is the burial ground, and I can't remember if they identify, but these smaller ones, quote unquote, oral history says people are buried there. Remember that. Remember that, right? Because this is one of the things. A lot of oral history can be good, but there's a lot of oral history that is not always accurate.
And also on the rim of the volcano, you have 3 very large mounds of rocks that are defined as the toa, or the generals for the Tuimanua, that overlook the crater to keep it safe and to make sure his burial is respected.
So that's what it kind of looks like. Very similar to Pulimele, right? The stacking of rocks.
Yes, that seems to be a very common kind of like
construction technique.
Yes, yes.
Now, on the floor of the crater, there's a lot of small stone mounds. There's also 2 fale foundations, or domestic foundations. One is very interesting, has a stone bowl, the remains of a stone bowl. And again, and these were the caretakers, took care of the spirits, both the Ananga, the ancestral spirits, and the Aitu, which were more of the, not demonic spirits, but more different spiritual entities not related to ancestry. There's also a series of long rock walls that are extending, some extending from the Kiasa of Tuimanua. And then, but most of the features, it's interesting, are on the eastern side, the northern side, and eastern side of the volcano. Very few are on the western side, and as you progressively move west, even on the rim, there's no features. Now, what Epi focused on was the larger context. And what she discovered was, first, Seth Quintus has it recently defined, sometime in the 15th century, it might be the 14th century, some carbon dating suggests that there was an intensification of agriculture, especially in Ofu Island, utilizing the ditch and parcel method, where the parcels were defined, there were ditches dug around the exterior of them, and what Quintus is suggesting is this was a method of agriculture to preserve these little plots of horticultural activity or intensification to prevent when hurricanes came, or not hurricanes, but typhoons came. These would protect the vegetation, more or less protect the vegetation from very destructive flash floods and water. This is also coinciding with the use of terraces. A lot of terraces, Epi and I also did a part of the old Ofu village survey, where we surveyed a series of terraces, very steep terraces. These terraces are built on the inclines of the mountains leading up to the top. And according to...
And once again, it looks like he chose that location because it's a defensive location, high up on a hill, right? Terraces, looks like fortifications, you know, overlooked by generals, and he's kind of in an isolated position. It sounds like someone who's worried about invasion,
repercussion, or something.
Yes, or something. This doesn't sound like someone who is ruling and has religious power, right? So it's these are just kind of the simple questions that are popping up. We're gonna just watch the whole video so that people aren't saying we're trying to hide something. We showed you the whole video that we saw. and there's just a couple points here and there that are interesting. We'll come back to those little mounds that
Yeah.
supposedly people were buried in, because we'll see what they find when they actually dig in those mounds.
The Tala, they were really focused on building palisades, a series of wood, and we have examples of that where either ground penetrating radar sees a series of post molds at the front of the terrace, or there's a mass of vegetation, mass of timber in front. And also another aspect, a defensive aspect, is what they loaded stones and large boulders at the edge, and that's indeed what we find in Ofu. And other archaeologists have found that in Tau. So there was also a warning facility called Fosia that was built on New Utele, a little islet right off the coast of Ofu, to warn as if there was any visitors coming, if they were friendly, mean for trade, or if they were enemies. So there was a defensive component, and what was really interesting is these Tala mentioned that these fortifications were all over the three islands, and then you could connect from terrace to terrace by notch logs of coconut.
Once again, the three islands, they're all heavily fortified in defensive
Positions.
structures.
Yeah.
Right? Interesting. Interesting.
Another aspect of this centralization was the what you find in Lu'utele and Fitiuta, and this is the rituals of the Tui Manua. These mentioned sacrifice, human sacrifice, cannibalism, and tremendous power. And this relates into the mana of the Tui Manua. Mana is a good word for power. Now, Quintus, I think, did a good job of defining this mana as provisioning for the people. And Mead and Kikuchi and Kramer, and recently Jeffrey Clark and Nolita Motu talked about the spiritual power. Tui Manua was allegedly so spiritual that he forbade Tui Tonga, the premier chief of Tonga, to bathe in his pool. And when he did, he died, and Tui Manua raised him from the dead. He also was, this title of Tui Manua was bestowed by Tangaloa, the chief deity of the Samoans.
See, this is the kind of stuff where it gets kind of weird, right?
Because going off just oral, it's kind of moving away from what their findings are.
It's moving away from the finding. But then here's the thing. We're saying the first Tui Manua was 400 years ago, 1500s, bestowed by Tangaloa.
Tangaloa's way, doesn't
you know what I mean? This is you know, every time the scientists trying to do this weird blend of oral history and the science, it just gets wonky because we're like, it doesn't match. Let's just stick to what are the structures, what you found, what's the dating look like, you know, like this thing, this great mana and power. Well, dude, he had 3 islands. What great mana and power could that be? I mean, I mean,
no, and that's the thing that's what contradicting, right? 1400, like that's not even the top 7 of the Tui Tonga. Like it's not even close to Tangaloa. So, and that's what I'm thinking. He could probably get it mixed up with somebody being probably in keeping the name of a Tangaloa. Maybe that could have been something that's probably an act, but there's no way that he forbid a Tui Tonga to go there and bathe there for the sake of he was so sacred, right? Because we know he can't be that sacred if that he doesn't even predate the Tui Tonga timeline. So if Tui Tonga is more sacred because one, very, very older. So sacredness only goes on to usually it's the ones who are
Age. Yeah.
older because they're more mystical. They're more you don't see them a lot, but you've heard of them from your your relatives or your people. So they're it's more sacred. So Manua probably be sacred within the vicinity of its archipelago area, maybe, but see, and this is the thing where, like you mentioned, oral stories contradict and everyone has a truth. But obviously, if everyone has the truth, then somebody is just making it up within
Yeah.
their own
If
oral
everybody's
history,
right, then
right?
that means everybody's wrong.
Yes.
We can't
But
all
yeah,
be
that's
right.
just
We can't all.
yeah, that's
Yeah.
just my
Yeah.
thoughts on that. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah. And this is the thing. I mean, we're just trying to find the evidence.
But Sayuli has defined other aspects which are very interesting. The Tui Manua had the long sight, or what they call the tofa mamau. That was not only kind of the prophetic long sight, could tell into the future, but also efficient planning, the more mundane long sight of preparing and provisioning for his people. There was
Once again, maybe we're just reading in between the lines,
Hmm.
but if this was a descendant or sibling of the Tui Tonga who understood how to manage administrative power within a civilization, one would understand why he would have such knowledge,
Mm,
right? He would understand how to do planning in a complex society. And so it's interesting. It's interesting. I
yeah.
mean, that's the kind of stuff we're talking about.
Hmm.
That some of the advantages of having access
Yeah.
to the central or the root or to the capital.
also
Yeah.
a duplication of stories. Not only do you have Tusili in the story in Ta'u, but you also have it in Upolu. There was also the stories of the Tala of conquest, where the Tui Manua conquested all the areas, including Tonga and
Once again, every time we get into oral history with the actual data, it gets wonky. You're telling me in the 1500s that Tui Manua conquered Tonga? When at the same time everybody else is saying the height of the Tui Tonga was in the 1500s?
Yeah.
Which one
Yeah.
is it? It can't be both. You can't
Yeah.
sit there in Manua and say we invaded Tonga in the 1500s. I mean, it just kind of gets, and yet we're the ones being disrespectful. We're the
Yeah.
ones that's trying to change
We're off.
history.
We're off our
We're the
rails.
ones,
Yeah.
exactly. Once again, oral histories alone can be very misleading and confusing. But whenever you tie it to physical data,
Yeah.
you have a better chance of not only understanding the oral history, but also sieving through. It's like, hey, maybe that story doesn't make sense that we invaded Tonga in the 1500s.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
Any thoughts, or you want to jump back into it, Mas?
No, and this is probably in the future with these studies. It's gonna be very important to collaborate with other Pacific Polynesian islands because yeah, like what you said, when you get the dates from their carbon dating, right, and then it seems like they're just going off of that, not considering the other oral histories from others, and then you just work it out because like I said, if you have everyone's oral history, there's no way you're going to be able to discover the true origins of Polynesia or the true history of that particular island if you're just going on within your own scope. But if you have the understanding that we were one nation, right, and then go and collaborate with other Pacific islands, then you're like, okay, so who's right, who's wrong, and then hey, if there's no agreement, hey, it is what it is. All we can do is present our ideas and let the rest of the Polynesian diaspora spread all over
Figure
the
that
world
out.
decide. You know what I mean?
And here's the funny thing, right? So what are we going to have to do with our cousins and brothers and sisters in Tapu Tapu Atea who said that was the center? Or how about the Tui Pulotu or the Tui Fiti saying that's where the center is?
Hmm.
Which one
Yeah.
is it, right? This is the
Yeah.
thing that we're talking about. We can't all be right. We can't all have been originated from Tahiti,
Yeah.
Samoa, Tonga, and Fiji.
Manua. Yeah.
You know, we gotta figure this out, right? And this is where ruins matter, like we talked about on the other study that we had on another live, where they said the biggest indicator of a civilization of power and influence, monuments. That's
Correct.
like 101. Once you start reaching a certain level of civilization, what's the natural thing that pops up? Monuments.
Mm.
Right now, there you could have monuments that disintegrate over time, especially if they're earth or wooden. Understood. So you can lose certain monuments.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, monuments are an indicator of stability, of sophisticated structure, right?
Yeah.
Both religious, social, and political. That's why, you know, people always mock us. I've seen, I don't know how to react to it, Mussy, when I see these types of comments, and it's hilarious because it's on TikTok the most. These guys are holding on to their ruins. Okay, like, is that supposed to be an insult? That's like me saying, that's like someone saying, those silly Egyptians, they hold on to their pyramids. They think they're ancient because of their pyramids, when my grandfather said he built a pyramid.
No, that's the funny thing, right? No, that's the funny thing. We have ancient civilizations that dwelled, right, that were the past, the pyramids of Giza, and even some of the pharaohs, you know, and also another one, the Colosseum, that's still in Rome.
A Roman,
you
all
know,
over. There's multiple similar Colosseums all over the place.
Yes, so I'm just saying, Tongatapu specifically was the headquarter of this empire or nation, and obviously we were the only. And if you notice, you know, just for their viewers, if you notice the way it was structured, a lot of those forts and stuff around Polynesia are just a lot of human labor just piling a bunch of rocks, right? Bunch of rocks. It's not to the level to kind of prove, like, you know, like the Colosseum level or the Pyramid of Giza. When you're talking about the Ha'amonga of Maui, that's literally big 3 stones stacked on each other, and then you're talking about land soil movement of other slabs of the langis all over. We're talking about thousands all over Tongatapu. So I'm like, you don't get that anywhere of the Polynesian islands.
And here's
right?
another one, Mussy. 100 acres of man-made land.
There's another one
that exists.
Right?
Tell me somewhere else in Polynesia where they took ocean and turned it into land, 100 acres. And it exists to this day. People are living on that. Do you really think that it's an insult to say you're holding on to your ruins? And the message, I was like, Shanna, do you realize how kind of silly that is? And yet we're the ones that need to bring evidence to the table.
We're the crazy ones.
We're the crazy ones.
We're the ones not taking our mental
history
illness
seriously.
Yeah. No, yeah. See, and that's the thing, and that's what makes. See, the only islands that are like kind of built the same way, but I can think of like Rapa Nui, but that's a special place of the stopover place to Waihi.
To Waihi,
you know, here in David Fale. So that's a special place with building the and I feel like that's why they're building those faces. It could be the first ancestors from Waihi that's kind of coming over to Polynesia. But that's why Tonga is more credible to be the headquarter place of our empire, of the Polynesian Empire, Polynesian nation. But yeah, it's funny. It's cool stuff, you know. All we can do is just give our ideas, let the public decide. We know the public can be, you know, from 1 to 100 at any time, and we understand, and it is what it is.
The next time I see an Egyptian, I'm gonna be like, get off of holding on to your pyramids for how
Don't
old
matter.
and all your mummies. You guys, my grandfather said
you guys were this way or that way, or you guys, that's not really your civilization. That's not. It didn't start from you guys.
Anyways, we'll come back. I think we're kind of getting a little too excited.
Fiji. The problem is in Tonga and Fiji, they don't have that reciprocal stories that Manua took over our area. But what they do feature is this mention, and this is all across Polynesia, of the spiritual power of Manua. That the Tui Manua was so filled with power, mana, spiritual power, that the Tui Tonga, instead of invading the island, it was the only area in Samoan archipelago that was not invaded by Tui Tonga, and preserved its independence, because Tui Tonga wanted to protect, not interfere with just the tremendous spiritual power of the dynasty. Now,
Okay. So if I am to accept this story, right? Let's just say, assume I accept. So the Tui Tonga wanted to protect, and that's a possibility. We've considered that, right? That maybe the Tui Manua is a sibling of the Tui Tonga, or a descendant, which would make it a descendant of the Tui Tonga. So my next question then is, Masi, what are all the defensive forts for? Right? So who's right next to Manua?
Upolu. Tutuila, Yeah, who knows?
So you're telling me the Tui Manua was the head of the Tui Manua Empire, but he had to build defensive mechanisms for the islands down the road?
Yeah.
Because, the Tui Tonga, for whatever reason, the Tui Tonga says, okay, we're not going to bother the Tui Manua. But the Tui Manua is still building defensive structures and lookouts. Who are they looking out for? Besides maybe the neighbor? So you're telling me you had to defend yourself against your neighbor, but you ruled the entire Polynesian nation. That's what I'm saying. Some of these things just don't add up.
Yeah. No, and that's the thing, right? Right, with the Tui Tonga staying in Upolu, Savai'i, and having influence in Tutuila and all of that. Obviously, this guy is saying that it's such a spiritual mana. It's not really. He's probably getting it twisted with. It's more. It could be some respectful way of saying this could be a close relative of mine. I don't want to. It's not a thing for me to kind of go and just kind of tell. And that's the thing we kind of bring to the table. It's probably, we think it could have been an older brother, because we do have stories, right, of the older brother not receiving the Tuitonga title from the father, for whatever reason. It could be a different reason, and we're probably thinking this could have been the person, and then
A
maybe this
potential explanation. Yeah.
potential explanation why the Tuitonga, Tui Manua went there, and maybe on his way out he did something, whatever, on his way to Manua, or maybe to Tutuila or whatever, and maybe that's why it's such a heavy presence of defense fortification of the Manua Islands. And it's just not a Tongan etiquette to be, when you do have the title influence, to kind of keep pouring on your close relative or brother. And that's one, we don't know if that's the right one, but I'm just saying that's been some of the oral history, and one that we know that's happened in the Tui Tonga tradition, and we can see it here if we put that now, because now we know the timeline. It's not older, right? It doesn't predate the Tui Tonga. That this could have been one, and maybe that's
That's
why.
Masi. That's not what my grandma told me.
Okay, okay, yeah, all right. Hey, whatever grandma tells you, that's, hey, let it stick with you,
Listen to grandma.
and yeah, just do
Well,
what you're
and,
told.
and to go along with what you're saying, this is relatively normal Tongan practice. And if you guys, anyone who's read George Vason's book, when the Tui Hatakalaua gave him the land, and George Vason was very, very successful on that land, the Tui Hatakalaua, whenever he wanted, would call tribute from anyone, right? He would come and say, hey, give me tribute, give me tribute. You know what George Vason said? That the Tui Hatakalaua was very kind to him, in that he would never come and tell George Vason, give me tribute, right? Even though it was his right to do so.
Yeah.
And George Vason said, even though he was being very kind to me, I would still go take him something, right? Even though he could come, because George Vason said that's what he did to all the other people. right? Hey, give me the tribute. And he would sometimes send out, hey, everybody bring food, blah, blah, blah. But he would never do that to George Vason because of his love and his respect to George Vason. He wouldn't do that. And so one can easily see that for one circumstance or another, like you said, that could explain why the Tu'itonga didn't go to conquer or invade. You think the Tu'itonga couldn't have done that?
Yeah.
Right? You telling me you really think the Tu'itonga? But obviously there's another explanation for it. And it is not unheard of for a high-ranking Tongan ruler to say, out of respect, I'm not going to come and bother you.
Yeah.
Whatever that is.
Yeah.
Oh, Yahweh. Oh, this cracks me up, man. I'm sorry, Grandma. I will go and let go of my ruins.
Some of these rock mounds Mohammed Sahib looked into, and the obvious explanations of the burial pits. Another explanation is these are a series of Ufi pits, especially if
you see where we just went. The oral history just went from, you see those mounds? That's where all the super loyal people to the Tu'i are buried, in those rock mounds. We went from super sacred burial mounds to
Ufi pits.
Ufi pits.
That is funny.
And here's another thing, Masi. How common is Ufi, and what is the preference of Ufi among Samoans?
It's not a preference.
Yeah.
Most Samoans think in their diet. Yeah.
Yeah. Who has the preference of Ufi?
The Tu'itonga. Yeah.
Tongans. Yeah, the Tu'itonga. So you're telling me Tu'i Manua over here is Samoan, but what is his preference? Ufi pits? I don't know.
Yeah.
Unless there's
That's a good point.
Unless Ufi is for another word in Manua that I don't know of, but the Ufi that we're familiar with is the preferred meal or highest rate, right? Is Ufi. So anyways, I'm just saying there's like these little nuggets all over the place that you're like, doesn't make sense, doesn't add up.
No, and Ufi is one of those things before money came over was your show of wealth or your status as a Tongan person, or as a person in whatever village you were in. It was your status.
Because it's the most difficult thing to kind of graze. It's it's a very needy plant.
Yes.
Right? You need it takes a lot of time and energy to do it right.
Correct.
So looks like the guys on YouTube are having a great time. They're laughing and having good time about singing Tula Fale. You guys look like you guys are doing really good over there. Malo Gautama.
Mari Gautama.
Looks like Nacho over there is doing a solo. So malo.
Mari.
You have a ring of stones, not in the center. This is a characteristic of an Ufi pit or yam pit. There's also other possibilities. It could be a commemoration, where a burial commemoration, where the body is not under the stones, but it's simply a commemoration. The problem with this is this Kikuchi only describes one commemorative mound, and that's in Tutuila. Another possibility is that these are just stone heaps mentioned by Green and Davidson. They excavated several of these heaps, and they could find nothing under it. There was no burials. There was no subsurface features. It was just literally a mound of stones. So
that was just a Sunday Umu location.
No, that was just a Umu after their Kava. It's funny.
But once again, what I'm saying is, look at what the oral history said. Okay, and that doesn't mean that this proves the oral history is wrong. Maybe there were people buried there. All I'm saying is, this is an example where oral history, when it's not tied down to something physical, it's very difficult to interpret and to nail down. That's just kind of my point there.
This broaches into the most tantalizing aspect of the state formation processes, because here we have three islands that are very interesting. You have some interesting parallels with Robert Carniero and environmental circumscription, where the agricultural intensification is needed to strengthen the polity, a polity that in this case lasted 400 years. You also have the martial.
I don't know if he seems to be announcing this 400 years like it's like, this is fantastic news for the Tu'i Manua. 400 years.
Yeah.
And I don't know if he realizes he's undermining the Tu'i Manua position.
Yeah.
Right? But he seems so excited. It's like, yeah, man, we've been able to identify this dynasty lasted 400 years. And everybody's like, what? Only 400?
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Very, very interesting.
Solomons and Barbara Bender talking about the big person hypotheses, where an individual or an individual group believes that they are descended from a deity, and in this case, or appointed by a deity, and that's what you have here with the Tu'i Manua being appointed by Tangaloa. You also have Ian Hodder and the prime mover of ideology, and this is very interesting with the idea of not only is the Tu'i Manua Moa descended or appointed by Tangaloa.
Oh man, guys, you guys are cracking me up in the chats. Yeah. If we weren't trying to keep it PG-13.
Mari, ikaw tama.
Oh, yeah, my favorite, the one that passes the filter, even though there's been some hilarious ones earlier. Somebody give them. That's 2 claps for the palang.
Hey, I feel bad. The Manua or the Samoan the Ha'amoa that was advising this palangi. Oh, you front up the camera, but this is what I think this is the story. And I was like, she offer the palangi, make him give a thing, and then the thing won't do the video of their findings and mixing their oral histories together. It's just poor guy, man.
Yeah, but he seems so excited. 400
yes, 400 years. Yeah.
You know, this is amazing. Well, it is amazing for us, but just for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
We're on opposite sides of amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, guys, getting too much laughter out of here, man.
Awesome.
But also that the Tu'i Manua is blessed by Tangaloa. And finally, you have kind of Clausen's kind of combination of factors that are leading for the stability of the dynasty. So here at Luitela, you have the role of ritual ideology and spiritual power. You have the threat of sacrifice and cannibalism. You have burials surrounding the Tu'i Manua that might not be burials at all, but commemorative. And these all serve to support the dynasty of the Tu'i Manua that lasted 400 years until the earliest part of the 20th century.
Shit. Yeah. No, and that's the funny thing. Claymore was saying they look like they set him up. They know it's a failure explanation, and their findings is like, oh, I guess we didn't find something that was older. And then whoever the Manuan person saw this, oh, we don't predate. Just go and explain and have fun. And the guy coming probably from Minnesota is like, oh, this is awesome. This is awesome. No idea that. Good stuff. It's good stuff.
Hi guys, I'm not trying to be. This is just hilarious. Yeah, I'm not trying to be rude.
Poor guy from Pennsylvania. He's just over there, so excited. Give
400 years.
400 years of Polynesian history, because he's probably thinking this is amazing accomplishment for Polynesians, and then the ones who really know are like, dude, man, poor guy.
So excited.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, guys, I did not think I was gonna enjoy this as much as I am, but it's kind of just, it's ridiculous to me in many ways, because I'm thinking of all the comments how disrespectful I am and Masi is, how we're ruining the history. Everybody recognizes, and then we see this.
Yeah.
And we're like, oh, so it was fair to ask a question at least.
Yeah.
Oh, Yahweh.
Good
Woo.
stuff, man. Good stuff.
Any Masi, you're gonna have to summarize for us.
No, I mean, poor guy, man. Just my thoughts. The guy is just over there. I don't know if it seems like he's just only understanding Manua and Tutuila and just Upolu and Sabai, but looks like my man has no idea with the other Polynesian islands, especially with the carbon dating that predates the findings, what they found. But hey, my man was excited to present what they found. I'm sure it went through a lot of sweat to go, do the work and stuff. And my man, you would think it would be somebody, because I know he mentioned a Samoan being part of their teams that would be able to present their findings because it's in their land. But looks like my man was chosen, and he did his best, and it was exciting, and it is what it is. But
Yeah.
hey, it's just another data point to strengthen the Tui Tonga position of being the only dynasty that's more than 400 years, uh, be all over Polynesia. But yeah, I mean, those are my kind of closing comments on that
Yeah.
presentation. Unless you have any new angles or
So
comments, Tua.
I'm just trying to gain my composure, man. I did not realize that would just dude make me react that way. That was hilarious. Anyways, that covers our our Tui Manua section. To let's see, I gotta look back at the notes, Masi. All right. All right. What we're gonna close out. These comments are hilarious. And it doesn't help that our viewers are absolutely hilarious. I mean, I'm here trying to
Great.
get it under control. And then I see the comments and it's just absolutely entertaining. Anyways, now that we're
Awesome.
coming back, let's see here. I'm going to share the last part of our program today. And it is a study that we're just going to dig into, speaking about the royal tombs, specifically the Paepae Telea, and some of the findings that are there. And I think this gives good contrast to what we just viewed, right? And to look into the context of of what we're looking at here. All right. That was too much. All right.
The rapid emergence of how do you say archaic Tongan
Yeah.
states, the royal
Yeah.
tomb of Paepae.
So we'll start out with a couple things. New research indicates that the royal tomb Paepae Telea was built AD 13 through 1400. So even that alone predates Tui Manua.
Correct.
But this is what's interesting to me, and this seems to be a theme every time they dig into the Tongan ruins and artifacts. It says more than 200 years earlier than its traditional association with Urakimata, right? So they're making an assumption that this predates Urakimata, or the other way to interpret it is Urakimata is 200 years further back, which would push Aho'eitu back, which would push everything back. And this is also when we look at when we looked at that urban scanning, right? And it pushes it back 700 years. So when we look at these little data points, just those two things alone, that's a 900-year shift. Or was it a 300-year on the other one? Whatever it was, anywhere between 500 and 900 year shift to the left.
Correct.
I mean, that's significant. That puts Ahoetus in the BCs.
Mm-hmm.
So now put that in context with what's being found on the dating with Tu'imanua. It's
Yeah.
very difficult to say now that the Tu'imanua predates the Tu'itonga and that the Tu'imanua is Tangaloa and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
See, this is what we've been saying from the beginning. Oral history is valuable, but what really refines it is when you tie it to a physical location. This is what Tevita Fale has based all of his research is. He took the oral history, tied it to a ruin, a location, a burial site, and that's how his Tu'itonga list was built. And that's where we can get the value of leveraging scientific empirical data and trying to align it and see what fits and makes sense of us understanding and navigating our oral history. So
Awesome.
all right. The next part here, we're just going to go over the highlighted, but the evidence suggests that the early Tongan state was a powerful and geographically expansive entity, able to rapidly organize and command the resources of the scattered archipelago. So once again, we're looking at a level of organization that's sophisticated, that's efficient, and can call on resources when needed. Like you were mentioning, Masi, to build all this, you gotta not only access the resources, but you gotta organize it, and then you have to have the know-how to execute the work. Like the 100 acres of basically civil engineering, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then to build the Ha'amonga, all these other things, even though we do take the position the Ha'amonga is much older than the Tu'itonga. But any thoughts on that, Masi, before I read into the other stuff?
No. It's just when it says expansive entity, I think that's another way of saying that expansive is just expanding way beyond the Tongan.
Yes.
When you add the history and then you add the oral history also from the Upolu, from Savai, then you add the history of Uvea and Futuna, right? And Fiji. So that's what I'm saying. Like that I think that expansive of that entity of the Tu'itonga is very vast, and that's another way of just saying that it was a nation just run and headquartered in Tongatapu. But
yeah, it basically says that the Tu'itonga seems to have the capacity to leverage resources to grow and to expand into other areas, like you were saying.
You know what's interesting too that I'm thinking? It seems like because maybe that's the reason why the ruins in Tonga took a lot of time and a lot of specialization is because they were able to command so much laborers to come and work on these ruins. Because what I see in those forts and maraes around Polynesia, it seems like maybe not as very simple in a way of constructing, and maybe not as labor intensive compared to what was that was happening.
It's basically like
in
an Amaka in Hawaii, right?
Yes.
You can have 5 to 6 guys working consistently, and you can build a decent marae off of that. But when you get to the Paepae, you get to the Ha'amonga, you get to the civil work to do the Fonuatanu. That is on a scale much larger than you would need to build these other things.
Hundreds of probably laborers to work on those.
Yeah. And it takes not only organization, but it takes resources to feed and to maintain, right? And to maintain a healthy labor force. There's a lot that goes into it, which kind of goes back to what they're saying here is the expansive capacity to do that. That's not easy. And it takes a level of power, sophistication, and organization and resources to do that. So this the introduction goes into it a little bit more, Masi. It says, the physical remains of the archaic states hold the clearest evidence available of the decisive social and political process that accompanied the creation of complex societies. That's pretty much just saying what we discussed earlier, right? State level societies are rare in prehistoric Pacific. the archaic Tongan state is the only known polity in Oceania to extend political control over an entire archipelago and to influence islands beyond its borders. So
Mm.
there's two things that are important here. When they say borders, they are thinking of Tonga as it exists now.
Yes.
Those borders didn't exist before,
Mhm.
right? So all they're saying is it expanded beyond what Tonga is now outside of that. But really, the ancient Polynesians wouldn't have seen that border. They would have just seen
Yes.
islands, part of a whole nation.
Correct. Correct.
All right.
I was just gonna add Dua, that's when, right, you kind of mentioned that's when oral history can fit in, because obviously these researchers do not understand the whole oral history of why they were built this way. They're just saying obviously these structures are proving very sophisticated, and there's some indication that the extensive influence is much greater than the Tongan archipelago kind of thing, right? They're just thinking maybe it's just to the other islands in Ha'apai and Vava'u, but obviously it's much more uh, expansive than that. But I mean, that's just my thoughts on
Yeah,
that.
100%. And it says here the Tongan state emerged. See, this is the thing that's interesting. Out of eastern Tongatapu at Heketa in the 12th to the 13th centuries AD.
Mhm.
It didn't emerge. These guys, the
They just
Polynesian
moved.
nation
Yeah.
is already well established there. And after the capital was relocated to La Paja, the state reached its height around 1500. No, sorry, we can't do that. That's when the Tui Manua conquered Tonga.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
we gotta double check that, right, Masi? So we'll
Yes,
make a
sir.
note. We'll make a note.
Poor guy from Minnesota, man. Poor guy.
Following an aggressive campaign of inter-island warfare conducted by the 24th holder of the title paramount to Tonga. I wonder if they're referring to Kaulfo Nuafekai,
Mm,
right?
mm.
Because
Because
he
that's the
seems
height.
to be the
The
most
height.
militaristic to
Mm,
Tonga.
mm.
The premier, oh no, I don't need to do that. The tomb is the largest. See, this is the thing. Like, this is where the
Mm.
ruins matter. It represents something. The
Yeah.
tomb is the largest prehistoric structure made in work stone in the South Pacific and contains blocks of chloral limestone weighing over 20 tons. This is what you were mentioning earlier, right? We're not talking about two Amaka guys
Yeah.
building, stacking small stones. We're
Yes.
talking about sophisticated and complicated understanding of civil engineering, structural
Yeah.
engineering, some level of math. Understand. This is why, me personally, we had to have had a written language at some point,
Mm.
because this is the type of knowledge that requires math, civil engineering, structural engineering. You know, you don't just sit there and
Mm.
spend, you know, years and thousands of hours to build something that you can't guarantee won't just fracture
Correct.
under the pressure.
Oh, or when there's nature that happens of earthquakes, or even tsunamis, or just terrible weather and stuff, or rains and floods, that these ruins will not crumble. So
Yeah,
obviously it's withstand, because even now they're
it's
still
still
visible.
there. Yeah. And what's interesting, in one of the studies that I looked at, they said there's like a lime cement that they found between the stones, which made me think of there's some oral history that the Paepae Telea was not exposed stone, that they had some kind of plastering over it, like some
Eh,
kind of
eh,
a finish over it,
eh.
and it's weathered away through time. But I thought that was interesting that in one of
That
the
is
studies I
interesting,
saw, there was kind of like a lime type of cement
to
that
protect
they
it.
found that they had in between the joints. And I'm
Oh,
wondering if you have that, then yeah, it's like, like you do like in concrete where you have that
yep.
finish over the top. It just
Mm.
makes it looks cleaner, it looks
Smooth.
uniform,
Mm, mm.
right? And it looks like cleaner, just much more beautiful. So there is oral history that was something that existed back then, and it was interesting that the study found some of that. Third, the presence of stone tools associated with the tomb and geochemically sourced to multiple islands. This is referencing that study that you mentioned earlier,
Yep.
Masi, indicates frequent long distance voyaging and the growth of the tributary base, like you were mentioning, right?
Mm. Mm.
Where is the evidence of the umiti that we discussed previously, right? How do
Well,
we knew that?
obviously, the umiti seems to be only seafood that was only happening. Hey, and maybe that was, and and like I said, the the Manua to Manua obviously had some status, but like I said, maybe it wasn't other material things, but it seems to be only seafood to be gathering there. But just my thoughts, just my opinion on that.
100%. In Tongan traditions, J20, that's Pai, is associated with the 29th Tuitonga Urakimata, also known as Telea, who lived around 1600 AD. The structure is famous for its massive limestone blocks that were reputedly made in Uvea Island and taken 850 kilometers to Tongatapu on the height of voyaging canoe Lomipea, which is the largest,
Interesting,
right?
because I know this is a debate, right? With the or am I just thinking of the Haabonga? Isn't there like a debate of where they're getting their limestone, either from the Ube and Futuna
All of those,
or
yeah.
Ewa,
Yeah.
right?
That's all the oral history. They haven't really confirmed where or when. Some of the people who they make a good point, like Uvea is a volcanic rock,
Yeah,
if I
I mean,
understand. So but that's what the oral history is explaining. And with oral history, maybe it's just saying they brought it from somewhere far away. I don't know
mm, mm,
the details on that. Um, it says here the basal and second tiers are constructed from carefully fitted blocks of coral limestone, except for two beach rock slabs in the eastern and western walls of the second tier. The
mm,
third tier is made of slabs that form when stratified beach sediments are cemented. Oh, this is the study. Are cemented with calcium carbonate
mm.
in the intertidal zone.
That's
Oh
what you
no,
kind of mentioned, right? With the
no, no,
whole
no.
cement.
This is
Oh no,
mentioning something else because
okay.
this is just saying that this is buildup of calcium from the location from the
Mm,
beaches. So I mean, but what this is saying is there's different rocks from different places, different
okay.
locations, different
With
types
the
of
like
rocks
the
uses.
first level could be somewhere else.
Yes,
The second level is somewhere else. They're not from the same area.
correct.
Okay. Yeah.
The total amount of quarried stone in J20, which is by Biotelea, was initially estimated at 519 pounds or tons, but block dimensions recorded during tomb conservation in 2014 indicate that the structure probably contains
Mm,
700 tons of stone. So
yeah.
the structures are getting bigger, the timeline is getting older.
Mm,
Like these are things that are getting better and better and better.
yeah.
Um, See here, the L-shaped corners, and this is on the pai,
Yeah.
designed to stop wall spreading. That's what I'm
Mm,
saying. This is a pretty sophisticated design,
yes.
you
Yeah.
know. And according to our oral history, who built the pai is the Samoans. They seem to
Yes.
have a lot of knowledge, had the right tools, and understood how to do a lot of this. This was something that
They
our Samoan
specialize in.
brothers
Yes.
and sisters were really good at. So let's see. I have another note the addition of soil layer used to hold the slabs and the old lagoon edge. So remember, this is the pai is on Fonuatan.
On
This
the
is
ocean.
where,
What the
yeah,
ocean
this
is.
is
Yeah.
technically should have been ocean.
Yes.
And so this red right here represents the end of the old or the shoreline
Mm,
before they extended. And remember, this goes on for much more. This is just
yeah.
coming down of the shoreline and it goes much deeper.
A
So
hundred
once
acres,
again,
right? 100
yeah,
acres.
100 acres overall. So once again, this is not just, oh, the pai is great, but it's built on basically man made land, which makes it even more sophisticated.
Yeah. Yeah.
South profile showing reclaimed land deposit. of coral and limestone boulders, limestone debris, a soil deposit added to hold the slabs of the nearby tomb, and charcoal lens and dated whatever. I'm not sure what that is, but basically we're talking about importing different kinds of material to stabilize and to hold
Mm.
the pie together. So once again,
Look at
this
that
is
different
a
materials to
yeah,
when they buried.
and gives a level of civil engineering. This is civil engineering that's
Yeah.
going on here. Understanding how different materials interact with each other to build a stable overall product.
Yeah.
Geochemical analysis of the carbonate crust and limestone flake from indicated that right here, the cemented crust is limestone debris, which was produced by shaping the tomb blocks.
Mm.
So cemented crust, like we're saying, there was oral history that there was a cement used on
Present.
these
Mm.
rocks.
Mm.
So that's another thing that's tied to oral history, gives a little more validity to that oral account. I
Yeah.
think that here's another one.
Partially buried worked limestone block recovered from the South Quarry area due to its thickness. The block was probably intended to be used in the second tier. Okay. And the transverse fracture suggests it broke during transport. Hmm.
Yeah. So we're talking about these large stones and so forth being
Hmm.
transported. I don't care. Even if you're only moving this thing a mile,
Yeah.
that is not easy to do, let alone for the possibility that they were shipping these things on the ocean. That's just kind of crazy. Um,
It is.
Want to read that one, Masi?
Yep. Ulwaki Mata first, the 29th Tuitonga is reputed. I just got a quick question, Tua. What list is these guys going off?
They're probably going
Just
off of
curious.
the Wesleyan one. That's the most
Wesleyan. Okay.
accepted. The one
Okay.
with Ahoetu at what 950 AD.
Okay.
The
950 AD.
Catholic
Okay.
one is not the
It's
one
the
that's
short,
usually
very,
referenced.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. All right. So Ulwaki Mata the first, the 29th Tuitonga, is reputed to be buried at La Paja in either or Samoa, Manua Islands, or he was lost at sea, and the J-22 was built as his memorial. Interesting.
yeah. So this, I guess, this is based off of oral history. They're saying that he may have been buried in Samoa, in
Yeah,
Manua. I don't know. I
yeah,
haven't heard that oral history, but apparently, you know, that there's some discussion. They got it from somewhere. I don't know.
yeah. Well, this is why it's important to do a collaborative work because obviously those guys in Manua have done the, extensive research and they didn't find any bodies, right? Just ufi pits.
Yeah,
But yeah, I mean that's the
yeah,
next step.
yeah. And here's the interesting thing: I've never heard stories of Tuitonga being lost at sea. Maybe that's
I've
something
yeah.
we could dig into. That's why I just highlighted it. Maybe that's something when Danny's on, we can bounce it
Mm,
off of him. It is feasible, however, given the close ties between Tonga and Uvea in late prehistory, that Uveans might have been involved in the construction as well.
probably.
So, which is possible, right? We know there's for
Yeah.
sure the oral
We need
history definitely confirms Samoans, but you need a lot
yeah.
of labor to do a lot of this stuff. You're bringing labor from wherever you can bring them in the entire nation.
Yeah. I'll just ask you, Dora, before we move on to this next paragraph here. Did they mention who were their Tongan advisors? I would assume they had some kind of. Was it just the Ministry of Education, whoever was the Ministry of
They
Education kind of guys
they're
that kind of give their
well,
oral backing?
they're mostly just citing other people.
Oh,
See, they're citing
gotcha.
other people, and they may have had some
Okay.
other source, but they're primarily just citing
Okay.
other
Gotcha.
books or other articles.
Okay. I can read this one.
Okay.
There are several difficulties in reconciling the traditional history of the land reclamation and construction of the J-22 tube by the 29th Paramount Ulwakimata the first. First, although traditions place land re- reclamation at the time of the 24th Tuitonga, 1500s, any landfill would have had to be removed in order to build J20 if it was constructed by Uwakimata the first. Second, placing the J20 tomb on reclaimed land already occupied by a junior chiefly line makes little sense given the spatial spatial separation of chiefly lineages with the Tuitonga in the east and Tuihatagalawa in the west. It is more probable, given the consistent dating results, that J20 was built when the entire area was used by the Tuitonga, and the spatial division occurred later, leaving the J20 and J21 tombs in an area occupied by the junior paramount.
Yeah, so they're just kind of saying they're trying to understand, right, the oral history of
Mm,
saying it was built by a Tuitonga, but then it's on, remember the man-made land for the
yeah,
Tuihatagalawa, and they're
yeah,
saying, hey, there's two interesting things. If it was built after the land was extended, then they would have to dig up
correct.
the expanded land so that they could fortify it to hold that weight, which once again, sophisticated understanding of
Mm,
civil engineering. But then there's also the challenge of, well, if that was the Tuihatagalawa land, why was it built there, you know,
mm,
when it'd been there for the Tuihatagalawa? Now, that could be because that was the Tuitonga coming back. And it could have been a way of showing I'm back because
yeah,
Urakimata and their father had been in Samoa for 5 generations. It could
correct.
have been a power move, quote unquote, to come and build the biggest langi, right?
Mhm,
And to try
mm,
and reinstate dominance. Who knows? That there's
interesting.
could be a handful of ways to explain that.
Yeah. The
Um,
F. Let me read
Go
that
ahead.
one.
Yeah,
The effort needed to extract the shaped limestone blocks is not known, but must have been significant, as Spainman records that the removal of zero point 0.4 meters, was it not square, was it
cubed.
quarter cube
Yeah.
of coral limestone during pit digging at La Paja took 2 men with metal tools 4 hours.
And it's 700 tons of stone.
Yes.
With modern tools, took them 4 hours for that little thing right there.
With modern tools, yeah, yeah,
Now, just imagine the level of effort, trying to imagine that,
yeah,
right? I
yeah.
mean, this is massive, you know?
Mm.
This is massive. I mean, can't help but to think like, geez.
The
The
royal,
Oh, go ahead, Mas.
yeah, the royal tombs of the Tuitonga are sacred structures, and when quarried, the fresh surfaces of the J20 blocks would have been highly reflective, as limestones typically have a solar reflective index. A now buried surface of yellow white limestone construction debris extending at least 60 meters to the west of J20 might represent a plaza, or is it country
Courtyard.
courtyard, suggesting that the tomb was meant to be viewed by canoes entering the Fanga'uta Lagoon. That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So
And that
what
and
that
that
Oh, go ahead,
no,
Mas.
wasn't no no isn't there stories of like when it was built in a way that when canoes and stuff would enter the lagoon, that they are seeing bunch of mounds or
Yeah.
langis that are
Wow
being built?
factor. Yeah.
Yes. Interesting.
It's basically to let everyone know when you come for your inasi, when you come for
Yes.
the polo polo, you've hit the center of the civilization, right? There's
Correct.
some wow factor, and that's what they're representing here. Is these seem to be located in ways when you clear
Yes.
out all the trees,
Mm.
right?
You're coming in and you're
You're coming
seeing.
into the capital.
Yeah.
There's no doubt you're not going to see what you're going to see here anywhere else in the civilization. Kind of like the pyramids, right? Kind
Mm.
of like
Yeah.
that, where you're like, yeah, this is next level.
You
I'm
know
not
you're
in
in
the outer
Egypt. You
islands.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. So you want me to read the next one, Tua?
yeah.
geochemical analysis of stone tools recovered from J20 and from the north and south quarries identified volcanic material from central Tonga, Ewa Island, Samoa, and Fiji.
So they're saying in one portion of it they found from all over different areas.
Nice.
See, it just talks about the marriages and alliances, right?
Mm-hmm.
So long distance voyaging, strategic marriages, and impressive monumental architecture were a
Yep.
feature of the early Tongan state. This is why ruins, yes, we will hold on to the ruins because
Yes.
it is a important testimony of what actually was achieved. I'll read these ones.
Okay.
It says such conditions supported the emergence of highly organized core polities that in some instances dominated entire regions, and through strategic outposts once again
Mm.
expanded their influence to the surrounding periphery.
Mm.
One of the poorly resolved issues about the rise of complex entities relates to the state formation and the specific mechanisms and the length of time required to create a centralized political entity from smaller autonomous political units. A
Yeah.
second issue relevant to the Tongan case relates to state
Power.
power and whether archaic states, once formed, needed centuries to acquire control over the landscapes and people of the titular state, or whether early polities exerted control from the outset over a wide range of human and material resources within the borders. Basically saying, in order to establish a stable empire,
Mm.
you don't achieve that overnight. You have to have long-term stability and leadership. Tui Manua over 400 years does not provide that.
No, that's not long. No.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tui Tonga over thousands of years, okay. Now you can have that.
Yeah.
Tongan traditions supported by archaeological data, so not just
Yeah.
the oral history, but
Yeah.
archaeological data assert that critical changes to the political system and management of land were made just 3 lineal generations of Tuitonga, the 10th Momo, 11th Tuitatui, and 12th Talatama. So they're saying they saw significant changes in the way land was managed, which is an
Mm.
indicator of expansion and growth.
Yes, and the height of the
Yes.
power of the Polynesian, the Tuitonga Empire.
In this short period, the first stone structures were built at Heketa. Then, after the move to La Paja, much larger projects were begun, including limestone cut ditch system, lagoon reclamation. These are the things we're talking about, right? The man-made land, and the
Mm-hmm.
construction of the remarkable J20 tomb that marked the state center. Once again,
Mm.
the centralized area for the civilization. The
Mm-hmm.
new architectural innovations, especially those involving the quarrying of coral limestone, materialized the apex status of the Tuitonga at a scale not seen previously.
Mm-hmm.
Recognition that Paepaetelea is probably the first of the royal tombs to be built at La Paja demonstrates that the early Tongan state could command significant workforce, while volcanic stone tools sourced to Fiji and Samoa and the presence of Tongan fortifications in East Fiji and in Ovea indicate early long distance interaction in warfare. Once again,
Yeah.
expansive history, not limited to 3 islands within a
Yeah.
small corner, purely based off of defensive fortifications. Blah, we could go on and
Mm-hmm.
use the contrast between Tui Manua and the Tui Tonga empires.
Awesome.
Anyways, I think that pretty much covers it, Masi. I mean, yeah, we covered a lot, did a lot of things.
Yeah.
Um, hopefully, this was enough data for people out there who are asking for more data. And you know what?
Mm.
We have more, and we will continue to bring out more.
Yes.
But any closing thoughts, Mashi?
No, this last study here, Dua, I think that big part it mentioned in this research paper of their findings, along with Tongan history and archaeological data points, prove that Tonga commanded a large labor force and also influence outside of the Tongan archipelago of today. And yeah, I mean, if this is not strong enough to kind of decide, I think we've kind of, mm, automatically understand that it's pretty much understanding of the who's the origin of the empires of Tui Manua and the Tui Tonga, because the Tui Pulotu is it's still not close by. We did have somebody did share their list, their list. We still hopefully he can come and present
Join
his
us.
list and yes,
Yes.
join us and tie down exactly where these titles of the Tuipulotu where they come from. But this is just a strong evidence of why the Tuitonga is the only headquarters in Tongatapu for the Polynesian Empire. But yeah, that's my thing.
No, I appreciate it, Masi. Really, at the end of the day, hopefully I didn't overdo having a good time and having a giggle. I just couldn't help it. But in a more serious note, we reiterate we are
Mm,
all one people,
mm,
right? The and I'll say this and I'll say it over and over again. There was no this is Tonga, that's Samoa.
mm,
It was the Polynesian nation. We did have names for the islands, but it was all one people. I believe in a unified um, state with religious and political and social infrastructure that united us as a people. And really, this is an effort to try and understand the truth. And we can't say, yeah, we're one people and we'll be united if we can't determine where the origin is, where we come from, because we can't have unity when everybody's saying you originate from your own corner of the
mm,
Polynesian Empire.
mm.
Really appreciate the viewers. Really enjoy and
Yeah,
are
thank you
grateful
for
for
the
the
viewers. Awesome.
interactions. Always a pleasure.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. Um, Honestly, this week was probably one of our best weeks for subscriptions, especially on YouTube. So
Mm,
thank you once again to everybody for each share, each like, each comment, and each subscription. It does go a long way in
mm,
helping us get the message out, share our thoughts and ideas. Um, we'll continue to have our interviews with guests, and then
mm.
also continuing with our uh, digital Kava sessions. What up, Bears? What will be our official closing statement? If you want to put in the chat what your closing statement will be to everybody, um, we'll give you a second if you're still on. What does Vaini bring to the table with its
Owa,
tacos? Bring us a
owa.
Vaini taco to end it out if you have a comment. But
Vaini poto. Owa,
Vaini,
owa, owa.
hey, all right. Water Bears has brought the final statement. Polynesia, biggest nation as far as square mileage is concerned.
Malo.
100%. I think that should be a t-shirt once we get to it is Polynesian nation. And with
Yes,
that being
sir.
said, to the Polynesian nation, ask the hard questions and stay curious. And till next time, be safe and have a good one. Thank
Malo.
you. Peace.
See ya.